Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yamina Revolution. And what is the Hopi prophecy about the man in the red hat? We got a Trump update. What's going on in Trump's cabinet picks? Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe. Support the platform, y'all. Revolution is a way of life, and revolution is for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We got some late night revolution. The hardest working revolutionary is back. Salute, family. I want to start the program off with this prophecy that's going on about the man in the red hat.
The Hopi prophecy, the man in the red hat, is mentioned in this prophecy, which specifically refers to a red cap, hat, or gown worn by a leader on the North American continent. In a thought-provoking video shot decades ago in 1972, a prophecy emerges that resonates with our current societal dynamics. This prophecy speaks of a nation on the North American continent led by a figure wearing a distinctive red hat. Many have speculated about the meaning behind the red hat, notably the one famously worn by Donald Trump. The specificity of this prophecy is both intriguing and chilling. The vision of a pivotal nation. The prophecy describes a powerful nation with millions of people and advanced technology. It suggests that this leader, adorned with a red cap or hat, will play a crucial role in a significant transformation. However, this power comes with the potential for self-destruction, as they may shake us up real hard and nearly destroy themselves. The prophecy foretells that despite the turmoil, a new generation will emerge from the chaos, marking a transformative period. The dark skies and coming forces. However, the prophecy does not end on a hopeful note. It speaks of dark skies filled with ships descending upon the earth. The old man speaks of people raining from the sky, suggesting an invasion or sudden appearance of a dominant power. In a single day, these forces are expected to seize control of the entire continent, marking a dramatic shift in power dynamics.
Who are those?
Watch the video filmed all the way back in 1972.
How are they going to do it? So they explained to me, we have a gourd rattle that we still use in our ceremony. And that gourd rattle represents the world. On one side, this figure is on the drawing. And another one is on this side. That'll be a gourd rattle. We still use them. The one old man told me, take a look. Whoever has this symbol in this world going to shake us up 2 times. And it just came to me quickly. And I wondered, what nation ever shown something similar to this one? Because they will be very intelligent people. They're going to produce many inventions of all types. They're going to be so powerful that they're going to use that to shake us up real hard. And they're going to almost destroy themselves. But later, out of it, a new generation is going to rise. This time, they will know what to do in the right manner, for the right purpose.
Oh, look, that good dinner, man.
Then around it, there's a sun symbol. Those people are very intelligent people that have that symbol. They have produced many things, invent many things, and they become powerful. And they also shake us up 2 times, second time, with the help of another. These 2 have shook us up 2 times real hard, warning us. And they almost destroy themselves. But out of it, a new generation is coming, stronger, much better equipment, everything, powerful things going to be developed by these 2 people. Then the third one that will finally bring about purification of this land in this continent would be a man with red cap, red hat, or red cloak. Now, we do not know who that nation is or what people, but they say those people will have a large population, and they will also have much scientific inventions of all types. Very powerful nation going to be. So once you start moving these others two will join him with all their power and might. The three of them going to come here quickly together, and nothing can stop them. This time they're going to come right here. They say even they're going to come here so fast they come here for breakfast. Now this is nice clear day today, calm, everything nice. Tomorrow morning maybe we get up at breakfast time, then the whole sky will be darkened. Old man said, I don't know what will cause it darkening of the sky. Then he said people will be raining from the sky. And in one day they're going to get control of this whole continent. And they're going to cut us up into 4 sections. And they're going to look for a leader that still remains, a native leader still remaining to the spiritual path. And to him, they will gather people here to him. And they will say, now these people, I gave them the religion and the duty to produce things, to invent things, and to become powerful people. When they came here, what have they been doing to you? Now, suppose he was the last chief still remaining in this area. They will ask him, and they will say, well, those people have destroyed my people. They have taken care of and taken everything from my people, land, rivers, and hunting rights, and everything that I used. They just took it away from me against my opposition. Then those that have done that, what we call purification, would be the real wicked people. People have taken advantage of them in that manner. These figures had no heads on them. That will be their supreme punishment. Because right in daylight, right in public, they're going to weed out those bad people and they're going to chop their heads off, they said. And that is what they said will happen. That's first punishment. Then they say, what about these people here? And he will look at them and said, well, at least they make an attempt to help us. They did try to do something to help us, protect us. And they will pull out all those people. They will know you can't get away. They said they'll have some means of catching you. And they will bring those people. There'll be a lot of those people. Then they will say, look, you have disturbed this land, life, these people. You have polluted their rivers and land and everything. Now you go and clean it up. And whoever survives out of that will be able to stay with the leader here. Then they say, what about these people? These people have really suffered, been persecuted and laughed at. They've been punished and they've been beat up also because they really stood by me. And they will pull out those people and they will be brought to him and they will be respected. That is what they said will happen at this period by the people that has this symbol and man with red cap and red coat. They will come from east direction, from where the sun rises. And they will come here quickly and they will have something to paralyze all man-made machinery. Everything come to a standstill. All power will go out. All man-made machinery will come to a standstill. And we will be helpless. Then they just come and take it over. And this is what they will happen to by those people that are coming from the east direction. Now, if those people are commissioned by the Great Spirit to do that for the Great Spirit, if we can't clean it ourselves here, and if they fail, then the Great Spirit said there are another people coming from west direction. They'll be coming here for a long time. They're just taking this time. Slowly they're coming and building up more power, more people, more invention, and all that. And they just kept coming. If these people doesn't come here to purify this for the Great Spirit, then this one will come. And they said, when that happens, don't get on the housetop and watch, because those people are coming from the west direction. There'll be millions of people coming up on the west coast, like ants crawling up on the land. And they will have no mercy for anyone. They'll be very cruel and severe. They're not going to ask questions. They're just going to whip everything as they come. They're going looking for someone that will hold on to the spiritual path here. They're going to do that. This is what they said is going to happen with these two purifiers on both sides are coming to this continent here where we started from, and we came back. We just about to destroy ourselves, mess it up. We can't straighten ourselves up, then these purifiers will have to do it. This is what they said will happen here. So whoever comes out, then we will meet the Great Spirit. But if not, if no one listens, then these elders, religious men, will go down into the kiva, go through a ceremony, then they go over a prayer to four corners of this earth, to the above and to the below, and said, all right, none of these, my children, my people have listened to me or helped me. Now you take over.
The age of purification, the Hopi prophecy emphasizes a period of purification, urging us to reconsider our relationship with the land and its resources. According to the prophecy, when these beings arrive, humanity will be divided into groups based on their actions and stewardship of the earth. The consequences for those who have harmed the land will be severe, while those who have sought to protect it will be given a chance to rectify their wrongs. A call to action. This message is particularly timely as we witness changes in leadership, such as the emergence of figures like RFK, who aim to restore health to the land through regenerative organic farming and environmental stewardship. The prophecy serves as a reminder that we must not only acknowledge our past mistakes, but actively work towards healing the planet. The clock is ticking. As the prophecy suggests, the urgency to act is palpable. We cannot afford to be passive observers. Instead, we must engage in meaningful actions to restore balance. The time for reflection is over. Now is the time for decisive action. Share the message. This video, which encapsulates the essence of the prophecy, deserves to be shared widely. It is crucial for individuals, especially those in positions of influence, to understand the gravity of this message. The Hopi people's call for action resonates with the need for collective responsibility in healing our planet. In conclusion, as we navigate these uncertain times, let us heed the wisdom of the Hopi prophecy. Together, we can work towards a future that honors the earth and its resources, ensuring a balanced and sustainable existence for generations to come.
Hey guys, Dabu7. I want to share with you guys here some interesting knowledge about Hopi prophecy and what they call the Red Hat people and its connection to Donald Trump. Now, this deals with what they call the Great Shaking of the World, and that's symbolized largely by World War III. Now, the Hopi call for this red hat or red cloak people to show up and their leader to lead this country through a time of great purification. Now, the Hopi say that when the iron bird flies, there would be a time where planes are in the sky. It says that these red-capped, red-robed people will appear. And it speaks of this leader of them being called the Bahana or Pahana, the purifier, aka the true white brother, will come to the Hopi land. They say that his ancestor of light complexion gives him the name, the great white brother, and they consider him to be an earth keeper or a supreme servant of the Most High. They say that once this blue star Kachina, as they call it, arrives, he will remove his mask in the village plaza during a sacred Kachina dance. Now, some people have often connected this blue star Kachina to a physical star, although the Hopi say this represents a spiritual person or being, an entity. And they celebrate this in their ceremonies. So apparently these Kachina spirit messengers are to show up toward the end, and all these different things were supposed to go down before it happened, including an object falling from the sky, which they said happened in 1979, and it burned blue as it fell as well. Now, there's all kinds of different opinions connected to this, but one thing that stands out symbolically is that the hat itself signifies authority, and the color often represents the rank of a person in a particular organization. You can look around the globe and you can see this also connected to the Catholic Church and Freemasonry in terms of the red caps and things like that worn. Trump, coming from a background here connected with this, wearing this red hat, they say in this day and age, they haven't seen a leader of this country step forward with a red cap. And this is what's very important, is this great purifier is supposed to be the leader through the time of purification in North America. It's what they call Turtle Island. The Indians called North America Turtle Island. So this is not going to be a red cap leader of another part of the world. So very interesting connections here in the fact that they made this such a thing, and it's out there big time right now. At a time where we could be on the doorstep of World War III, time of purification. A lot of thoughts connected to this. I thought I'd throw it out there and give you guys some of this information. I'm going to break this down.
Liberal corporate media is dying as viewers flee the networks after Donald Trump's dominant election win. We are witnessing MSNBC and CNN go through a massive ratings crater as they lose all credibility with their audience. MSNBC's drop-off is so bad that Comcast is now considering selling it. Bro, MSNBC had half of their audience flee following Donald Trump's election. CNN is faring no better, with hundreds of employees being laid off, Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper not receiving any raises, and top talent at CNN are now under threat. Imagine having Trump derangement syndrome so bad that you take an entire network because you guys lose all your credibility. After deceiving their own audience, MSNBC and CNN don't even take accountability over it. They then proceed to blame the far left for Donald Trump winning. Kamala Harris ran with Liz Cheney and George W. Bush Republicans while declaring an era of never-ending war and supporting genocide. Meanwhile, the autopsy done on MSNBC is that Kamala Harris lost because the Democratic Party was too far to the left. Meanwhile, the establishment is wondering why the American people no longer get their news from corporate media outlets like MSNBC and CNN. You can only insult the intelligence of people for so long before you completely lose credibility.
Simply some flight.
I hope that Joe Biden makes the next 10 weeks as consequential as he can. I don't care about drawing outside the lines or what Republicans may think about it. This is within your purview. You can actually do it, and you should do it. And, you know, one more thing, John, is you have a hell of a vice president right there who has a legal pedigree to sit on the Supreme Court, and let Republicans go crazy and hate. I'm even mentioning that option.
How disgusting.
You're floating. Are you floating? This is, 7:39 a.m. on the East Coast. Did Bakari Sellers just float Vice President Kamala Harris as a potential Supreme Court nominee?
not only am I floating it, but I want to stir up everything. I want people's heads to explode this morning so we go into the weekend just knowing that the chaos is not ended just yet.
That's Bakari Crybaby Sellout Sellers calling for Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor to step down and have Joe Biden replace her with Kamala Harris. He said it was within Biden's purview to nominate Kamala Harris as the next Supreme Court justice. And all I got to say is, these guys caping for Kamala are just as illogical and incompetent as the feminists. They're all completely chaotic, out of order. Kamala Harris lost. She was smoked in that election, the electoral vote and the popular vote. But somehow all these delusional Debbies are sitting inside these group chats trying to devise a plan to put this pretending chameleon on top, as if the city girl president hadn't gotten away with enough scamming already. One option they're considering in the Democrat Party is to stage another coup on Joe Biden and make him resign so Kamala can become president for a month. And then the other option they're floating around is forcing Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor off the bench to allow Biden to nominate Kamala to the Supreme Court. These whiny soy boy nutcases and feminists, they're really losing it. Yeah, they're really out here trying to sell this idea to the public.
The only thing worse than a 6-3 court is the possibility of a 7-2 court. And frankly, we do not owe anything to Supreme Court justice. We shouldn't feel beholden to people. We should be focused and beholden to our agenda, to our values, to our mission. Sonia Sotomayor is not our God or our significant other. She is not some deity. She is not entitled to our undying, everlasting support. The people who work in government are vehicles to enact our agenda that we all believe in. And when they themselves become an impediment to that mission, then they should step aside in service of that mission itself.
First, most of the public are not in agreement with your agenda. We literally just had an election where your agenda was rejected. And what values are you holding up again? I'm telling you, for the people always stumping on values and upholding the system, it's funny how you're trying to rebel against the same system by bullying this lady off the bench. She's got a lifetime appointment in her position on the Supreme Court. So you don't get to make the decision on if or when she should retire. How y'all run around talking about my body, my choice, but you want to make the choice for Sotomayor?
So Donald Trump's election victory renewing Democrats' anxiety of the future of the U.S. Supreme Court. Politico reporting that some lawmakers are suggesting that the 70-year-old Justice Sonia Sotomayor should resign immediately so Democrats can replace her during a lame duck session. How would that go over? Right? Shannon Bream covers the court, host of Fox News Sunday. Shannon, good morning to you. Wow. So Politico says this isn't simply some flight of fancy happening among among progressive activists online. It's a conversation members of the Senate are actively engaged in. Is this realistic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the words they used were hair on fire. They want to know whether Justice Sotomayor feels good, is going to stick around another 4 years. Remember, there was pressure on her before this election to step down. We all have the rewind of remembering Justice Ginsburg and how much pressure was put on her well into her 80s and how it made her dig in and stay. There is a lot of potential peril for Democrats. First of all, they'd have to get Justice Sotomayor, who the last time I saw her on the bench looks actively engaged, healthy, completely able to do the job the way she's always done it. They'd have to convince her to retire. And then you take this chance with this very close Senate that you can actually push someone through in time. Would you want roadblocks or, say, a Manchin defection or others who are worried about whoever is eventually nominated, that they're not moderate enough? Actually having the votes to get that through, it's kind of tenuous. And would you want to leave an open seat for President Trump to walk in and fill on January 20th? I don't think so. There's a lot of risk involved in this plan.
It's certainly a lot of risk involved here for the Democrats. At this point, I'm convinced they're playing Russian roulette, but I can't say that it'll never happen because look at what they did to Joe Biden. If they could make a sitting president drop out of his re-election campaign just 3 months out when he didn't want to, then they could threaten a Supreme Court justice and force her to retire, which would also be another close call that could potentially backfire in their faces. Because you would have to rely on everybody being on board with each other, quickly confirming the nominee to avoid leaving that seat wide open, literally dropping the decision right in Trump's lap. You know, for him to do exactly what you're trying to avoid. And that's taking the Supreme Court from 6-3 to 7-2.
I see a lot of sexism and ageism too. And I think it's awful. This is a lifetime appointment. This is her decision, not
That's
theirs,
it.
and that they're having conversations about her life. How disrespectful is that? And you think Mark Cuban talking about how Donald Trump doesn't surround himself by any intelligent women, and then he appoints, and we'll talk about it in a moment, Susie Wiles as the first woman chief of staff for any president. And I think it's terrible. Do you remember they tried this with Breyer, and it kind of worked? There was a retire Breyer whole campaign in order to get him to leave so that they could do this. But how awful is it to do this to a woman who went through confirmation to then be thrown under the bus by them because they want to try to sneak one in for President Biden's legacy?
Yeah, and there are shades of those who, as we've discussed, who feel like there is a bit of disability overtone discrimination to this kind of thing, because she's open about the fact that she's a diabetic. She carefully manages her health, and she's, not made a secret of that. But to kind of suggest that it's 70 and because she manages diabetes, that maybe it's time for her to go, that she wouldn't last 4 years from President Trump, that's very offensive to a lot of people, and I'm sure to her too. Now, I will say this. We've seen her publicly talk about how she has had her heart broken at time with decisions. It's been very difficult and exhausting and demoralizing to be on the court as it is now. But any decision about her leaving would have to be her timing. And as you said, a lifetime appointment for this woman who has done the work for years and years and years and seems completely capable of continuing.
It's crazy how they're supposed to be for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they're the same ones trying to bully the first Latina on the Supreme Court out of her position. Yeah, Sonia Sotomayor, she's a Puerto Rican. And not only was she the first Hispanic on the Supreme Court, but she's the first woman of color on the bench. Obama appointed her. Now they're up here trying to bully her into resigning, talking about she's old, and she's not even the first or second oldest on the bench. Then they keep bringing up her type 1 diabetes that she's had forever. She's 70. She's been a type 1 diabetic like her whole life since she was 7. And that didn't stop Obama from appointing her 15 years ago. But now all of a sudden, they're trying to make it seem like she's got some permanent physical disability that's preventing her from serving when she's been dealing with this long before she reached the Supreme Court. We have to be honest. If somebody on the other side did what Bakari Sellout did, he would have been called misogynistic, racist, and they will also say he's discriminating against her based on her age and diabetes. They're looking really crazy out here, doing all of this to get Kamala to take her place, which is absolutely insane, by the way. And then these demonic people really think they're God. Who said the younger person they put in office is going to outlive Sotomayor? Anything could happen. And let me tell you, I may not agree with all of her decisions, but right is right and wrong is wrong. And they're dead wrong for even thinking about bullying this woman out of her position. Now, if Nancy Pelosi is able to pull this off, then they can forget about Hispanic women because they're going to vote against the party next time in even higher numbers. But all are not on board. Bernie Sanders, he's not going along with it.
Some Democrats behind the scenes quietly talking about the possibility, should Justice Sotomayor step down, to allow President Biden to appoint someone who's younger. She's only 70 years old. Is that something that you would support? Do you think she should step down?
No, I don't.
Have you heard any talk of this?
A little bit, yes. I don't think it's a sensible approach.
And you don't think it's a sensible approach?
They actually talking about this behind the scenes. They desperate.
The prospect of Sotomayor retiring did spark conversation on X, with Tyler Austin, a contributor to The Atlantic, writing much of what people see as the right's tactical brilliance is really just the tactical stupidity of liberals like RBG, Biden, and Sotomayor, who are too narcissistic to do the right thing, and normie libs who are too scared of being called sexist, ageist, racist, etc., to tell them to GTFO. I think you know what that stands for. Another X user said, "Stop it with the Sotomayor should retire tomorrow. Honestly, shut the F up. Trump is going to replace Alito and Thomas with 40-year-olds, unquote. Currently, SCOTUS has a 6-3 conservative majority. Should Sonia Sotomayor retire now?" I'm going to say, so from the Democratic perspective, she absolutely should. I think she should absolutely retire right now. If I was a partisan Democrat, if I wanted to see more Democratic Supreme Court outcomes, I would be like, oh my God, this woman has to go now. 70 is no spring chicken. I know we've accepted that everyone in government has to be 8,000 years old. She has been open about health problems, and Democrats may not have an opportunity to appoint a Supreme Court justice again for 4 years, for 8 years, for who knows. This, because you got to have you got to have the presidency and control of the Senate, or you will not have that's just the reality.
And whose fault is that? You have to win the election in order to be in the position to make a Supreme Court appointment. You also have to have cooperation with someone on the court that's ready to leave the bench. Remember, they have lifetime appointments, so you just can't kick them out. And yes, talking like this is absolutely crazy when they made such a big deal out of picking her in the first place when Obama appointed her. She was the first woman of color, the first Hispanic. And it's not lost on me that these are the same people who try to create fake outrage with Puerto Ricans just a week before the election. Well, look at what they're doing to a Puerto Rican right now. These people are crazy, and they sound like the races they claim are on the other side. They just use identity politics to gain favor, literally use them as tools, and then they discard them when they're no longer useful. And all of a sudden, Sotomayor is useless after doing their bidding for so long. She's all of a sudden so much of a hazard, they want to force her out. This is all crazy. Do you think the Democrat mafia should force Sotomayor out of office and replace her with Kamala Harris? Was that a good idea from Bakari Sellout to push Sotomayor out and put Kamala in? Let me know what you think below.
And we warned all of you that this was probably going to happen, and we had hoped that it wouldn't. Trump
Justice Department specifically. So
minutes ago, right before we came to air. So your new attorney shakes hands with Mike Johnson. He got a standing ovation among House Republicans, gave a speech there. Elon Musk was in the room at the time. He stood up, got a standing ovation. So that was a big moment there. And then, of course, he arrives at the White House and President Biden shakes hands with him. This was a really awkward moment because President Biden said, "Welcome back." And he was thrilled to see him. Welcome back. And the smirking going on because I think according to reports, President Biden and Jill Biden voted for President Trump. So this was like the I don't know, scorched earth strategy, and said it was going to be a smooth transition back into the White House. It'd be a totally smooth environment.
what else would you say? It makes total sense to say welcome back.
Yeah, I guess you would, right?
Gentlemanly.
This is come back to your house. It's kind of weird though, because like he beat him.
Yeah.
Right. So he kicked him out of the house.
Right.
And then it's like kicking a roommate out. Now he's coming back.
But Trump is not kicking out Biden. The Democrats did that.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. The coup that took place is the thing that kicked him out. Before we get to the Senate battle, we have to talk about all of the breaking news that happened just a few minutes ago, right before we came to air. So your new attorney general, if he is, of course, confirmed, would be Matt Gaetz. Congressman Matt Gaetz will be the new attorney general of the United States.
Now, that pick is a shocking one to me. That's a FU to the swamp and the establishment. And he did try to put a lot of people from Florida around him. I told y'all that earlier when we was looking at his picks. There's a bunch of Zionists. Matt Gaetz is a toss-up. He would say some things about Israel. But I done also heard him say we need to get the hell out of Africa. He didn't try to remove the troops from Syria. You know, he been going after a lot of the BS that's going on with Trump. So Trump really did a very wise thing by putting Matt Gaetz in as Attorney General.
It's President Trump choosing him just a few minutes ago. That's great news. So you're getting some good and the bad here, right? You're getting some great nominations. They have to be appointments.
Well, it's interesting news because one, he introduced a bill to remove troops from Syria. He's actually paying attention to the fact that the United States is illegally occupying Syria. He has introduced bills to withdraw from Ukraine.
Yemen.
He has, yes, introduced bills, that's right, to withdraw from Yemen. And he has been vocal about weaponizing the federal government and the Justice Department specifically. So him in charge of the Justice Department would put somebody who's looking out for the fact that the Justice Department would not be actively working to dethrone Donald Trump, which happened when the FBI decided to interfere with the election by hiding the Hunter Biden laptop story and lying to the American people about it.
Yeah. So Matt Gaetz, fabulous choice for Attorney General. I'm thrilled about this choice. Tulsi Gabbard, also announced today as head of Director of National Intelligence. Tulsi Gabbard, amazing choice.
That's a good pick. Tulsi Gabbard is a good pick. She's going to be going after a lot of the government that's been targeting America's things nation, but she still loves Israel a little bit too much for me. She don't want war with Russia, but I done heard her talk tough about Iran. So, you know, that's more of Trump going after his political enemies legally within the jurisdiction of America.
Again, she was targeted by national intelligence.
And now
she
she'll
was
be heading it.
spied on. She was stopped at national security checkpoints as a threat. Now she's going to get some insight into why'd that happen. Can I see my file, dudes?
Yeah.
Now
Why
that I'm the
am I?
boss?
Why am I considered a terrorist? I served my country with distinction. I was in Congress, and
Yeah.
you're flagging me as a threat on aircraft. Like, hi, I'm in charge now.
Right.
Hello, I'm in charge. Also in charge of the
Department of State.
The Department of
is
State.
Marco Rubio.
Marco
Where's our
Rubio.
flashing poop emoji?
So we talked about this yesterday, of course, or 2 days ago now. Was it 2 days ago? No, yesterday we talked about it here on the show, and we warned all of you that this was probably going to happen, and we had hoped that it wouldn't. Trump took a long time to actually make this official after these leaks came out. I want to know where the leaks came from, though, on Marco Rubio. Who leaked this?
Marco Rubio.
Did Marco Rubio leak this information?
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how long this guy is going to be in this job. He is not an America First guy. He's absolutely a warmonger, and he's a pro-Israel guy. So he is Israel First warmonger.
He's a Ukraine first, Israel first. He loves war. There's not a war he met that he hasn't joined the Clean Plate Club on that war.
And even, go ahead.
I was going to say, isn't it a silver lining, though, that if he doesn't follow Trump's agenda, he can get rid of him at any point, right?
See how it's going to go.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He wants to end the war in Ukraine. He doesn't want to escalate in the Middle East. So if Rubio steps out of line, you're fired. And I think that would be an amazing. So I hope that, you know, we'll see how this goes.
Well, he's going to start a war in Latin America.
Does a leopard, though, change its spots? Is that the phrase?
Does
a
I
cheetah
don't know.
change its
I mean, that
stripes?
guy talks a lot of shit. I would love to see him walk into a room with Vladimir Putin and talk that kind of shit to his face. I doubt he would do that if he was forced to be part of the peace envoy.
Yeah, he was also in cahoots with Victoria Nuland, right? You'll recall that whole thing. So I'm not a fan. Even Tulsi Gabbard basically says that, you know, he would be a terrible choice. And Ron Paul yesterday says, if anyone is focused on America first, this is a terrible choice for America. You have people like Elise Stefanik also being chosen by Trump. Again, Israel first as a UN ambassador. So again, it's basically like Israel gets two ambassadors to the United Nations. America's, which is now Israel first, and their own in the United Nations. This also comes on a day, by the way, when Turkey has just announced they're done. They're done. We have no relations any longer with Israel. We're finished, and there are no connections to these countries at all anymore. So this comes at a really interesting moment. And so again, you get some good and you get some bad. You get Matt Gaetz, you get Tulsi Gabbard, and then you get Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. And just a few minutes ago, of course, the Senate voting to put in place John Thune. Now look at your screen here. It was Rick Scott of Florida. You have John Cornyn in the center, and you have John Thune on the right-hand side. He will now replace, on the right-hand side, John Thune will now replace.
I told you, Trump I told you that Trump tried to put everybody from Florida in power. He don't trust them people, man. He don't trust them people. He try to put Florida people in power to keep them close around him, you know. But he ain't the first one. Brock tried to surround himself with a bunch of people from Chicago. Bush had a bunch of Southern Texas people. You know, Bill Clinton had a bunch of Southern good old bars, Arkansas, Deep South, that type of BS. So, but you know, the deep state beat out Trump man Rick Scott and put their own Republican in power. Now, this is bad because he going to try to go against everything Trump going to do. You see, this is a problem. You see, the deep state, they really try to subvert the U.S. president with the Israeli first. And they the ones making Trump submit U.S. foreign policy to Israel first individuals.
Mitch McConnell as the majority leader in the Senate. And what's really crazy is Rick Scott only missed the second ballot by just 2 votes. So MAGA lost in the Senate. And, we do not want Thune in there at all. Remember Tucker Carlson just a few days ago posted, they're going to have the secret ballot. you gotta call your members of Congress right now and demand Rick Scott as your choice, because otherwise you're going to have
even
like
with
another
picking Rubio. There's a fucking warmongering war hawk. Trump picked Florida war hawk. Some people hate war, but see Trump. I hope Trump can keep his eyes on him and ears on him. He must feel like, well, he from Florida and he understand how we got to move. You know, I hope he know what he doing with putting Rubio in his. And they definitely pissed off at his Secretary of Defense, that guy on Fox News. I know they pissed because everybody's saying he inexperienced is a bad. Yeah, that's good. That's good. When they all hating on him, that means it's a good thing.
They're Mitch McConnell in there, kind of pushing up against this.
Give that man that was
Thune
on
has been
TV, he'll
around.
be my
You know, he's
I
a
love
swamp
that.
rat. He's been around since 2005. He's like your classic establishment guy. You know, he loves Ukraine. He loves Zelensky. You know, he's a Mitch McConnell type of guy. I don't know.
Was he one
Not
of the
good.
authors of that crappy border bill? I thought I remembered seeing his name on it.
That's a good
where they were like,
question.
because they said it was bipartisan, and I thought he was one of the authors or sponsors. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure he was.
Something I teach my kids: if you don't know, just say, "I don't know, Daddy. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know." To be honest with you, that's a blind spot for me. But we'll see what kind of Republican Party looks like that now, and with him being able to push through the agenda. Charlie Kirk, I think, summed it up well. He tweeted this just a few minutes ago and said, "John Thune is Senate Majority Leader. He has a short window to show us that he will support President Trump, fill his cabinet positions, confirm his judges, and pass his agenda. If he does, we will support him. If he doesn't, we will work to remove him." And you should remember that President Trump has a mandate. I mean, he has an absolute mandate because all of the Republicans that he supported that ran in this election won. Those that won because of Trump's support and overwhelming popular vote support for President Trump. So he has the mandate right now. So will John Thune get in the way of this? You recall the last time, 2017, when they were trying to put all of these things in place after his inauguration, Mitch McConnell got in the way of a lot of it right out of the gate and really slowed a lot of that momentum down. So he has all of these things he's planning to do right away. Will John Thune get in the way? I don't know, but he has in the past, of course, spoken out against him, says we don't need him as president of the United States. He wanted other candidates. He spoke out pretty publicly about that. So, yeah, we'll be watching this very, very closely.
Well, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, took a swipe at her own party on Monday. Now, she's been doing a ton of Monday morning quarterbacking. What went wrong? How'd we miss that? What conservative podcast should I listen to? What do the American people really want? It's very existential, all of her sort of video blogs that she takes to the internet because she thinks everybody wants that from her. But she says that Americans are sick and tired of fake people. That's interesting coming from her. She says Kamala Harris was supposed to be the alternative for Donald Trump, but she says people can see through kind of these fake alliances. Watch her say this.
Personally, I don't. I think that
she got to go too.
A lot of voters really don't like fake people, and they're sick and tired of fake politicians. And so what I actually think is worse is saying something you don't believe. And so if during the entire time in campaign season, you're saying that you're down with trans people or like the LGBT community, and then you lose an election, and then the next day you say all that stuff was wrong. I actually think what people are more upset about is someone was doing something they didn't believe and just saying something. Like, if you actually weren't about that life, why did you campaign as though you were?
Right. Yes.
I think that she doesn't understand the passage of time. Like, you can't vote for someone who then after the election didn't support the reasons you voted for. None of that makes sense. Like, in hindsight, you knew that that person didn't really support those things because you knew that after your vote was cast, they would drop that. It makes no sense.
Well, also, she's admitting that she knew that Kamala Harris was phony and totally fake on every issue, right? So what she's doing, why didn't you tell her? So you're lying.
No. What she's saying is all over the Democratic platform, CNN, MSNBC, you hear some Democrats telling the truth saying where they went wrong. They shouldn't have done all little woke tampons in boys' bathrooms, boys playing girls' sports, not securing the border, not wanting to be tough on criminals. And that's what they're saying. So she said, oh, that's fake. They just wish you would have said that in the beginning. Man, lady, whatever. That's the truth.
You're fake. Why didn't you tell us ahead of time? You knew that she was lying. Why didn't you get out on camera, AOC, and tell all the Democrats she's phony? Like, we need a better candidate here. But you kept that close to the vest.
The same reason she campaigned as an anti-war candidate, and she's not really that. She's fake.
Right.
You're
She's
fake.
so rich to tell us or tell Democrats.
And then
about
support
fakery.
every war she's been able to vote on. She voted for war funding
All of
every
them
single
do.
time.
Love war. Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. Good point. Physician, heal thyself.
Right. So it's being called the Kamala chameleon approach. So it could be a cautionary tale for Democrats in the future. By the way, don't pretend that you own guns. Don't pretend that you're for the sake, the security of the southern border. Don't pretend that you want men kept out of women's.
And all those southern shoe shiners, all the Greek freaks, all those Baptist civil rights phonies expose their hand with the Israel war. Because like I say, I'm definitely going to expose them every Dr. King day and every time we want to talk about the civil rights, because they prove they don't give a damn about no civil rights. They prove that they stand with a nation. I'm with Israel. Israel don't give a damn about no civil rights. Israel got whites only water fountains. Israel got whites only roads. And Jamal Bowman, the congressman who lost his seat in New York, said that he was shocked when he went to Israel and found out it was some places, if he wasn't escorted, he would have never been able to go to as a black person. Dr. King would have said that's disgusting, but that's what they standing with. They stand with whites only water fountains. If you are Palestinian, you can't drink out that water fountain. That's disgusting. But there ain't no going back for them shoe shiners. We bringing that up every time.
Sports, when they dress up and they pretend to be a woman, like all of those things. Don't pretend. If you did, we would, if you actually believe those things, you might be conservative, you might be libertarian, you certainly wouldn't be a Democrat right now if you're anti-war. Oh boy. Well, get this. Here's a bombshell story that the mainstream media is ignoring. The CDC was planning concentration camps in the spring of 2020, according to newly released documents. So imagine this: in the middle of a national crisis, your government, yes, the CDC, sat in a room and planned a massive system of quarantine camps across the United States, camps where they would isolate entire groups of people based on their health status, their risk profile, as they called it. It sounds like something out of a dystopian movie, but no, in fact, it's the United States of America under your CDC. It's real. It was called the shielding approach. The shielding approach. Thanks to Jeffrey Tucker for breaking the story over the Browning Institute. Now, according to the CDC's own documents and plan, here you can read it, the interim operational considerations for implementing the shielding approach to prevent COVID-19 infections. This has now since been removed and hidden. The CDC is trying to hide this now. This is their detailed plan where they would set up green zones to physically separate people considered high risk. Imagine that entire populations, possibly your loved ones, packed into quarantine centers with severely restricted movement. By the way, they did this in Australia, as we covered it here on the show. They even included provisions in this plan to limit outside contact, meaning no religious gatherings. So you couldn't go to church or anything like that if you wanted to. No family visits. You want to go see grandma? Sorry. Your government is telling you, no, you can't. No legal recourse either. So no, your lawyers couldn't come and meet with you to protect your rights. Like, hey, you're putting me in a quarantine camp. Can I see my lawyer? Sorry, you can't. National health risk. CDC says so on their shielding approach plan. You're in there indefinitely, all in the name of public health. Now they'll tell you, oh, this was just a precaution, right? But let's be real. This wasn't about protecting people. This was about control. Pure and simple. And while they didn't roll these camps out specifically, this plan, I think, speaks volumes about the mindset of these public health institutions, the Dr. Fauci's, the people in the CDC, the people that were lying to you, all of you. They didn't scrap it because they saw the error. They didn't scrap it because they saw the error in their ways. They didn't shelve this at the time. They only removed it once it was revealed and long after it was drafted. Here's Jeffrey Tucker's reporting on this. He says, no matter how bad you think COVID policies were, they were intended to be worse. Consider the vaccine passports alone, he writes. 6 cities were locked down to include only the vaccinated indoor public indoor spaces. They were New York City, Boston, Chicago, New Orleans, Washington, D.C., and Seattle. The plan was to enforce this with a vaccine passport. It broke. Once the news leaked out that the shot didn't stop the infection or transmission, the planners lost public support and the scheme collapsed. This is a warning about the unelected health bureaucrats and how far they are willing to go. And that's why, like on shows like this or independent media, that we're calling out this stuff. We need to amplify that as much as possible, because all of your mainstream media and legacy media was telling you that, you know, Rachel Maddow telling you that the shot, stopped the spread of COVID, right?
She did say that. And
all these mainstream media organizations were telling you. They were all sponsored by Pfizer.
They still say that. In fact, the LA Times still said that when they were taking a hit at RFK Jr., saying that the COVID vaccine
prevented the spread.
Yes.
They're still printing that
and saved lives. Yes, they still in their hit piece over the summer on RFK Jr. They still said that, and they only link to studies that show that the COVID vaccine lowered the use of ventilators. That's all they've got.
So thank you for subscribing to our channel.
Saying, if we were to say that on YouTube, we could get banned for just
isn't that crazy?
Like even suggesting, and
they reversed their course.
Times.
Yeah, YouTube did a 180-degree flip. You'll recall when we were reporting that we got strikes. We got 2-week ban. YouTube blocked us and banned us for 2 weeks for reading Pfizer's own documents on the air. And then they reversed their policy 180 degrees. You could no longer say that it stops the spread. Right now, if you say the opposite,
we're not
you get in
saying
trouble.
neither of those things. Let's just leave it right there, because we're still beholden to those.
Yeah, no, we are reporting what they said.
Yeah,
what the Los Angeles Times said, but that's not what we said.
Right.
So anyway, full stop there.
Okay. Ukraine, they are very sad that Mike Pompeo will not be part of the new Trump administration. This headline here deserves a middle finger. Officials in Kyiv disturbed by Pompeo's snub. That's because obviously Pompeo is a war hawk and would keep that war going. And that's what they want. Ukraine is upset that Pompeo will not have a role in the Trump administration. We know this because Donald Trump over the weekend announced this, that both Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley would not have a role in the upcoming Trump administration. And Kyiv officials called this, quote, a negative development. They worry that J.D. Vance's position will be the new U.S. position. What was that? Well, namely that U.S. has no interest in supporting the war in Ukraine, which is true. Now, President-elect Donald Trump has said that he wants this war to end. And there are reports now that he is working on compiling an envoy to Ukraine, much like the Middle East envoy that he already has appointed. Here are the headlines on that. Now, this would be a group of people, non-salaried, according to Fox News, who would go to Ukraine and force Ukraine to show the heck up at the peace table, at a negotiating table, which is why earlier I said, if Marco Rubio becomes Secretary of State and is part of that envoy, I would like to see him talk all that shit that he talks on the news to Vladimir Putin's face, and see how little Marco looks then. Okay, but earlier today on Fox News, they had a contributor called Brett Velikovich. He is a former special ops guy, and he told Fox News that he's been in Ukraine recently. And in Ukraine, they're actually super excited about Donald Trump's election, because that means that there is a leader in the United States that could, in fact, lead to peace. So they said that the media is lying to you when they say that the Ukrainians don't want Donald Trump. Watch.
But wanting the war to end soon does not mean not supporting Ukraine. People don't seem to remember that Trump provided lethal aid to Ukraine during his first term. He didn't appease Russia during the first term. He's just simply stating he wants the war to be over. And a lot of people want the war to be over.
Absolutely.
You know, Ukrainians are very resilient. They're fighters from birth. They'll fight till every last man, woman, and child. But we shouldn't make them have to do that. We wield a lot of power as the American government, and Trump needs to use that power. Ukrainians want peace. They want the war to end. And one of the more annoying things that I have to see when I'm in countries, I have to sit there and watch liberal media coverage of the region that's been running near nonstop lies about how Ukrainians supposedly feel about Trump, and pushing this fake agenda here in Europe the last couple of days of how bad supposedly Ukrainians think it is that he was elected. And that is just not true. I've had a lot of conversations with senior Ukrainian government officials who nearly every single one of them say the same thing. There is overwhelming and resounding excitement that Trump won the presidency and how much he's going to help Ukraine. They see Trump as the answer to ending this war and bringing back peace to that country.
Yeah, no crap. They don't want.
Revolutionary salute to our family, Ben, Israel, for the donation to the war chest, the super sticker. Revolution is where life. Absolutely appreciate the love, family. Shalom to you and salute.
Want to die anymore.
Yeah.
You know, nearly 1 million Ukrainians have been killed thanks to the U.S.-backed coup in 2014 that led to the entire decimation of a generation of young men in Ukraine. You want to say that this was Putin's unprovoked war? Well, you're an idiot. It's not. Read
Bad
books.
news.
Understand the
Bad
United
news,
States
salute.
CIA-backed coup that instigated this entire thing needs to be stopped. Trump knows it. And the Ukrainians now have had all of their young men destroyed, killed, or maimed beyond recognition. They don't want this anymore. And so to hear like these sort of Washington Post reports or The Economist is saying that they're upset with Trump winning is a total lie. Don't believe it 1 second.
Right. Well, you know who is upset, though, that Trump won is Zelensky, because this narcissist will no longer get on the cover of Vogue. He won't have any more media tours. If the war ends, then Ukraine will have to hold presidential elections, which Zelensky canceled, you'll recall. So they can't even vote him out. But if they get the chance after the war ends, then they will, in fact, do that if Ukrainian voters have any sense. Now, The Hill reports that Trump has a personal disdain for Zelensky, as if that's a personality flaw. Well, then I have that personality flaw. Anyone who has studied the history of this war in Ukraine should have this personality flaw of having a disdain for Zelensky. Boris Johnson, who is not in power right now, told GB News that the UK would just step up and send some troops to Ukraine if the United States stops funding that war. He doesn't have any authority to say this. That's probably a good thing, but the British people might want to shut that down because he caused hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians to die by stink bombing the peace negotiation in 2022. This could have been done, but he deterred Zelensky from the already signed peace documents. So again, the Kremlin now is denouncing him for saying this. They said, having ceded power, Johnson continues to provoke and incite. In other words, shut up, Boris Johnson. The rest of us want peace.
I love this meme today. A lot of these memes are going around on social media, like of President Biden consoling Zelensky. He's crying and he's just putting his hand on him. You know, AI generated, but this one's going around today too. Zelensky calling up Trump. You know, is money coming? Go F yourself. And then he starts crying. And Trump laughing. I love that.
Go away, troll.
Go away, little troll. We're done giving you money. That's for sure. All right, we got more news here. Okay, let's talk about this UFO hearing today. The second big congressional UFO hearing today in Congress. We finally moved past the
Medvedev, by Mr. Belousov and Mr. Shoigu. I can continue this list forever. Mr. Patrushev. The minimum basic requirement is return to the framework of the Istanbul agreements, but with the consideration of the realities on the ground. Simple as that. So yeah, not well, bye-bye. So Russia continues to do what she's doing. So simple as that. And any kind of this like outright lies of Washington Post that Trump called, you know, Putin. Theoretically, he can call Putin as a private citizen. They know each other. They are not friends, of course, but they know each other. But Logan's Act obviously prevents him from, you know, just basically doing anything, you know. So we can see the hysteria around this. But I mean, the bottom line is very clear, and it never changed really, except for the, of course, realities on the ground. Period. There's nothing to discuss there.
Andre, do you think that the discussion will have to have, you know, in December of 2021, the Russians sent a document, a written document, to the to NATO and the U.S., mainly the U.S., and said, we need to talk about, and if you look at that document, really the foundation of it was some kind of a European security agreement where we don't have to go through this anymore. This is what's going to happen on the border. This is going to be who's where. We negotiate, get the missiles off our border. We don't, well, blah, blah, blah. Do you think they're going, how hard do you think the Russians would push for that? And a comprehensive European security agreement. Because the bottom line is this, that would help everybody. It would really be good for everybody, except of course the crazy neocons.
First, we have to separate two different tracks here. Ukrainian track, which is specifically Ukraine, or whatever will be left of it. And of course, the larger issue of NATO expansion and things of this nature. I don't think so there will be any kind, considering the fact who Trump appointed today and yesterday, there will be no normal negotiations about it. I mean, there will be a lot of, pathos-ridden rhetoric from those gung-hos, he appointed. But reality is, well, if they don't want to deal with this, too bad, But in terms of Ukraine, we know what's going to happen to Ukraine. As per the conditions presented by Russia in 2021, Russians will, continue to be largely sticking to this agenda, and nothing can change it. Simple as that.
Scott, based on one of the things, some of the things we're saying, I'm going to assume things could change, but I think it's an assumption at this point that when Trump gets in, when he comes in on the 20th of January, that one of the things he's going to say to Ukraine is no more money. No more money. And that changes everything, because then Ukraine's kind of got to get a deal. I mean, Europe doesn't have the money. We hear all this cackling of these idiots in Europe. We'll keep going without it. I don't know if you guys saw it. Bojo said we may have to send UK soldiers. Oh yeah, boy, that'll bail the Ukrainians out. A couple dozen soldiers from the UK. They might as well send their soccer hooligans at this point. There's probably a lot more of them. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, I think a lot of people are putting far too much emphasis on the idea of the United States shutting off the spigot to Ukraine. Trump, if you recall, he said he's going to make 2 magic phone calls, not 1, but 2. One would be to Ukraine, threatening to shut off the spigot. But the other one would be to Russia, that if Russia doesn't yield to Trump's demands, the spigot will be turned on. As Andre has made it clear, Russia is going to yield to nothing but Russia's demands. And so this team of amateurs that and buffoons that Trump is assembling are going to be confronted with the fact that Russia is...
sound issue for me?
No, for Scott. Scott's got a little more.
No, you're also breaking up for some reason. You're kidding.
Will Trump do? Now, the smart thing for Trump to do would be to enter negotiations with Russia with no preconditions, and literally lead off by saying, before we start, I'm informing you that my administration is terminating the previous administration's policy of seeking the strategic defeat of Russia. Now, if you do that, Russia's going to be like, okay, let's talk. And now that they're not going to yield on Ukraine, but at least they'll be open to talking. There can be no dialogue of any nature as long as the United States maintains this notion that it seeks the strategic defeat of Russia in Ukraine. So Trump will have to reverse course on that, and he has not shown any proclivity to think that way. But the most important thing is that I think what we're going to see, to be honest, is that Trump is going to threaten Russia with the flooding of resources into Ukraine. This isn't going to be about Trump shutting down Ukrainian resources. This is going to be about Trump seeking to open the floodgates and putting pressure on Europe to open the floodgates too. There is going to be an extraordinarily dangerous period of time early on in the Trump administration where we will lurch very close to nuclear war. Because
Andre, can I ask you to sign out and sign back in? I think it looks like it might be coming from yours. So just sign out. Well, I'll just remove you, and then you can, let me see. There we go. And if Andre, just sign back in. Okay, so now Andre can sign back in. Okay, go ahead. Sorry about that. Yeah, trying to deal with this buzzing. All right, continue.
Was I buzzing or
no? It was Andre.
Oh, okay. No, I think that we're going to see the Trump administration, because they welcome back, Andre.
Oh, thank you.
Because they don't have the skill set to negotiate. You know, this is where we could have used a Tulsi Gabbard. We could have used anybody who wasn't ideologically aligned with. I mean, Marco Rubio, if he is indeed the Secretary of State, is not somebody who's going to sit there and say, let's make a deal with Russia. This ridiculous buffoon that they just brought in from Fox News is not going to say, let's make a deal with Russia. These are people that are going to say, America has to be strong. America, strength. We have to do this, that, and the other thing. And Russia's going to go, you already tried it and it failed, but hey, you're welcome to keep doing it. We're just going to keep kicking Ukrainian ass. And oh, by the way, kicking NATO's ass. And if you want to bring it on, we'll nuke you. And then we're right back to square one again. At least the Biden administration had learned its lesson about the realities that are here. In this case, I honestly think we would have had a better chance of securing a peace with Ukraine and Russia with a Harris administration than we are with a Trump administration. I was hopeful, but those hopes have been dashed. He is literally putting the world's worst people in the critical decision-making positions that are necessary for any agreement.
You know,
yeah, because the small hat Zionists hate
Russia. And I felt, no matter who was
there, it's a historical thing.
I felt that at some point we get to this particular spot, and here's the spot. The U.S. has to face the reality that they're not the hegemon anymore. At some point, you know, there's an old saying about a narcissist. If you want to find out if somebody's a narcissist, tell them no. Narcissists hate when anybody says no, right? So my point is, at some point, the U.S. says, well, you have to do this. And Russia says, we ain't going to do it. And there's only one way to make us do it. You got to come to our border and fight us. We're fighting on our border. We're protecting our strategic border. And we ain't going to stop doing what we're doing. And there's only one way for you to try it. And you got to come here. And you got to stop us, because the answer is no. And I felt like no matter what happened, at some point, the U.S. that can't face that it doesn't have the power is going to come face to face with somebody that says no, and that somebody is going to be Russia and Ukraine at some point. Andre.
Well, the situation with Ukraine is very clear. It is a NATO's defeat, and what is happening in the last 72 hours, I would say, yeah, that was expected. It's just a matter of what kind of cauldrons will be drawn by Russian army, you know, and it's not an issue. It's tactical minutiae, essentially, operational minutiae, if you wish. You know, people who are doing this, they know what they're doing. And the question is, for me, the marker was actually Doug McGregor. You know, I thought if he would tap him as the national security advisor, you know, then we'll have a chance, you know. Now I saw the guy who is a gun-ho dude, you know, which, yeah, he thought. So, yeah, it's a sad state. But the point is, and here I might maybe digress a little bit with Scott on this issue. Russians are good accountants, okay? Especially people from main chief operational directorate of the general staff. They know what Trump can actually provide. The only thing which United States can provide now, it still can, but it will be literally removing parts of the what would be untouchable stocks already low of the U.S. Equipment, hardware, and I'm not sure about money. Money really do not buy much. So yeah, sure, Russians will demilitarize United States completely. For NATO, they are at the end of their technical capability. When you look at Luftwaffe or Royal Air Force, it is pathetic, really. So now these French guys who think that they're so clever, they say, oh, we're going to give you 6 Mirages. Okay. How long they're going to live, those 6 Mirages? Not long. So, and that's what we are expecting here. As per, again, the United States deciding to duke it out, I don't think so. Even those gun-hos in his administration, there is the issue of the Atlantic Wall, not Atlantic Wall of the World War II, which Hitler and then at some point of time Rommel was supervising it to build, against the possible invasion of the Allies. No, we're talking about Atlantic Wall as those shipping lanes of communications, because as much as the U.S. Navy is, well, it has issues. Okay, let's put it this way. It has excellent submarine force, but there is nothing in the U.S. Navy arsenal, not even close, which can stop what actually just Northern Fleet alone submarine force can unleash on the shipping lanes of communications. Okay, simple as that. And these are not Houthis, okay? They will be hypersonics flying, and you cannot stop that. And they're not going to be necessarily killing, the, what's the name of it? It will be strategic lift, which will be sunk completely. Simple as that.
Scott, that's the other thing about it, I guess, that I want to, let me run that by you. The Pentagon's realities, because yes, Trump can say, if you don't do this, if you don't do X, I'll do Y. The problem is when he says, oh yeah, well, I'm going to flood you with weapons, Pentagon says, yeah, we ain't got no really weapons to flood them with. We'll flood them with now. We're kind of behind, and there's a whole lot going on in the Middle East. See, that's the other issue that Trump has, the constraints. And I would say this, based on the election, based on what's going on, they ain't meeting their recruiting goals no time soon. People are not joining the military like they used to. So what about the issue of Trump maybe coming in with a big mouth, but severe restrictions in military and hardware and personnel capabilities, Scott?
But again, this is what I've been talking about all along. People tend to forget that Donald Trump is the man who redid America's nuclear employment plan and brought in new categories of nuclear weapons called usable nukes. The new B-61 bombs, the new W-76-2. Andre, I'll tell you this right now. The moment Russia fires Zircon missiles against American commercial shipping, the Atlantic Wall, America nukes Russia instantly. That's the reality of a Trump administration. If we can sit here and say that's suicide, we know what the result is. These people, these morons that he's brought in, actually have already voted in favor of. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State,
I know, yeah,
already seen the nuclear employment plan. He knows what options will be given to the president in any scenario, and he has approved those options.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. The problem, of course, you cannot nuke Russia with B-61, which is gravity bomb, and when you have to deploy the F-35, which are carriers. You can nuke Russia only by means of the strategic deterrent, which is a Trident,
which Russia has no response to. Russia has no response, meaning that what we shoot the W-76-2 at, we will hit.
Oh no, it's primarily Russians are more worried about Trident. That's what they are worried
and
about.
This is a Trident. The W-76-2
yeah, I mean,
that's and the second we fire a W-76-2 at Russia, they won't know that it's not a W-76 or a W-82. They don't know that it's a small yield, although it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Is a Trident coming in, and at that point in time, Russia launches on detect, and the world ends.
Response, head-on response.
And this is what I've been trying to tell the American people about from day one. We are as close as we have ever been about nuclear war. Donald Trump had a chance to avoid it. I did a meme about this right before the election. Drawing on the Avengers and all that. 1 in 14 million. Well, he just blew it. If he actually goes forward with this, with these people, with the policies that are being articulated, there's no good way out of it, because they will not back down. They will push. When you say they'll empty the arsenal, I'm telling you right now that there are categories of weapons that we have not provided Ukraine yet, that we will.
Oh no, there will be. So yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because obviously you have to keep in mind Conventionally, Russia doesn't care what will be deployed there. Well, they care, but they really don't care in the sense of the technology, because as already listened, anybody who is anybody in any kind of the operational position, they read American combat manuals, field manuals. I mean, they know what it is, So it's not like that. It doesn't matter how much or whatever will be categories of weapons. Just some conventional, fine. It's what else? Tomahawks? It's an obsolete missile. And the question is now, what are you going to get in the response? That's the problem, which many people do not understand, or which I write since 2014. Russia has the conventional escalation dominance. That's the problem. And there is, they have been screaming like crazy about this whole issue with the nuclear weapons. Let me tell you this way. They call it, it was since 1990s, what was called the de-escalation by means of the nuclear explosions. At some point of time, when Russia was conventionally not ready, granted a lot of what was bluff on the American part, what you would have a couple of Tu-95 MCs launching from, taking off from Engels Air Base and fly towards Novaya Zemlya, with already, at that time, towards North Pole, and explode megaton class, weapons, just to demonstrate that we have it and we can go with it. This thing, which it's not there anymore, there's no necessity, because that's the problem. The issue here that conventionally the United States cannot win Russia, no matter how they try. That's the problem. And the question is that even those gun hoes whom he appointed today, even they, they should have some kind of debriefings on this matter. We cannot assume that the whole American intelligence community are morons. We cannot do that. There are some people who obviously understand, at least they are accountants, and they have to come up and, Center for the Strategic and International Studies recently released the book, the whole book almost, you can find it on their website. They counting numbers. Numbers are not there. And that's the problem. They can, B-61 is, it's a nuclear weapon, and Russians have their response to it, which could be nuclear, but it is definitely not deliverable in the modern, basically a battlefield. It's Trident D2. That's the issue. Not even Minuteman, but Trident 2 D5, which is that. So let
me ask you this, Scott. Based on what you're seeing, because we're having a talk now, right? We're a long ways from January 20th, which means the situation could be vastly different, both in the Middle East and in, the discussion we're having now is based on the context we're in right now. I feel that the context in both of those places is going to be markedly different by then, but we don't know how. Based on what you're seeing in the field right now, based on what you're seeing on the contact line, et cetera, what is the trajectory of things? How do you project things going forward over the next, say, 2 months in Ukraine?
Look, the Russians that I'm talking to are confident of a.
We got buzzing, but it's I don't know what it is. It's coming. Actually, it's coming from through the throughput from Andre, and we signed him out and back.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think it's Andre. I think this one actually might be.
It's just
that's CIA. Damn.
When Andre did that bumping, it stopped. Whatever it was, it must have been a wire.
Because I was beating up on some stuff here too. I was on a trip this past weekend, and I reassembled my computer.
Okay.
I had wires.
Andre, play the bongo drums on your desk or whatever if it starts to go act up again. That seems to have helped. Okay, we're good. Let's roll.
All right.
Scott.
CIA, damn you! Stop interfering with our conversation.
All right, Scott. On the ground, what do you see?
First of all, we have to remember that the Russians aren't letting the calendar drive their operations. You see these ridiculous stories about Russia lost 1,500 guys yesterday. Today they lost 1,700. Well, the guys I'm talking to are saying, there's days where we have wounded, but there's days where we don't suffer any dead. There's days where we do suffer dead, and there's casualties and all this. But the idea that Russia's losing 1,700 guys a day is just ludicrous. Ukraine's losing that many on a bad day, but Russia's not. And this is the reality that's driving the Russian operations. These are very deliberate operations that are done very carefully. And it's frustratingly slow for people who are expecting Russia to have these, this giant, big. Russia is advancing steadily across the board. The other thing that the Russian commanders have said is that the Ukrainians are fighting extraordinarily hard, and that this is a very, very difficult fight. And the Ukrainians, there's many instances where the Russians just expect them to surrender or retreat, and they stand fast and they die. And this makes the going very slow as well. And so anybody who is thinking that automatically between now and January 20th, the Russians will have this massive breakthrough, big arrows, occupy Odessa, occupy Kharkov. No, I think the best Russia could hope for by January 20th is to reach the Dnipropetrovsk, boundary. They've got to go about 20 kilometers. That's still, at the pace that they're going right now, that's a tough thing to expect. The Ukrainian army is fully capable of sacrificing men for time. So if the goal of the Ukrainian military is to wait until January 20th in hopes that Trump somehow changes the equation to their betterment, which is a gamble because we really don't know what Trump's going to do, they can do that. The Ukrainians, I believe, are capable of sacrificing men for this. The trickier part is the Ukrainian society and the Ukrainian economy. This winter is going to be a very difficult winter for Ukraine. And I think, what is the number? 90% of the thermal power production capability has been shut down. We're going to be talking about tens of millions of people with no electricity, no power, no running water. This will be a disaster for them. And this could lead to the political collapse of the Ukrainian government, which then could, precipitate changes on the battlefield. But I think that, let's say a stretch of warm weather comes in and we don't get societal collapse. I think anybody who thinks that Russia is going to change the entire dynamic of this war between now and January 20th is wrong. I think this is going to continue to be very deliberate offensive by the Russians, achieving their objectives, which is leading to the strategic defeat of Ukraine. But Russia's not going to hit the accelerator to try and do something by January 20th. And so we're just going to be left with Russia winning at a very gradual pace.
Yeah, one thing we've learned is that's how the Russians fight, slowly, deliberately, and overwhelming. I did want to ask you something, Andre, and that is President Putin spoke at, I believe it was Valdai here for hours and on end, as he is wont to do recently. One of the things that I find interesting is he mentioned China. He referred to China as an ally. I've been reading that now Russia's now saying that Russia and China are going to jointly produce some military hardware. When I see some of these China hawks, I feel like I think like Afghanistan. Oh, we've got to get out of Afghanistan. Why? So we can start our next war in Ukraine. You know what I mean? Oh, we got to get out of Ukraine. Why? So we can start our next war in China. Well, it seems to me that both the Russians and the Chinese understand that dynamic, and they're kind of setting up so that it's not easy for the U.S. Anyway, your thoughts? The U.S., Russians, China. Now, if you put it all together, they've signed this agreement with
North Korea. Yeah. It was ratified. Yeah, but
with Iran, there's a lot going on, and they seem to be real. Anyway, your thoughts on Russia and its allies seemingly building up a plan for the U.S.'s usual game. I'll drop this war that I lost and go start a new one.
Yeah, I mean, that's what United States does now. It is a pattern. And obviously, Trump is China hawk himself. So, and he has those gung-hos who will be primarily, swinging their fists at China. Russia is not going to allow China to go down. Chinese is a commercial society. It's obviously they are really good at producing things and mass producing things, including very complex things. It's a technologically advanced nation. And but of course, you need to provide them not only with the mass, but also with some tools which allow you to sustain whatever United States decides to do, in terms of attacking China. Many people do not know, but Vladimir Putin stated that Russia provided China, helped, as he said, to build the SPRN, the system of the early warning, for the missile attack. It's not just ballistic missiles. These are not only beyond horizon radar, which will look not only above the horizon, they look beyond the horizon and to a very long distance. So Russia was at it for a while now. What Chinese do not have at this stage is, of course, the operational experience in operating in the environment, for example, which United States can bring to bear, which is, of course, naval warfare, so, and you pretty much can sit there and literally use calculator and you will know what will be the first salvo by the United States. Not difficult to really calculate. And you will have to look at the model and see for yourself what Chinese need to do to actually secure themselves, or at least blunt this, first salvo. Albeit, of course, you will see and you will know the warning on the accumulation of the forces and pre-deployment of the forces. United States is not gonna fight China on land. There is no way it can win it. But naval arm of the United States is powerful and still powerful, and they can definitely do some damage. And as they think, because instead of going to the real military studies field, they all read Clausewitz and Sun Tzu for some reason, which are pretty much irrelevant for the modern war. And they think that, oh yeah, we can compel the guys to do our will, we just show our massive, firepower. We launch like whatever, 800 JASSMs, and voila. Well, it's, how to put it politely, it's a really delusion, let's put it this way. And even the most, what it's called, exceptionalist hawks, they admit, you can look it up, those uber-patriotic American, nationalists or chauvinists, they say, yeah, if we fight China, we're going to lose a lot of things, like a lot. Well, yeah, that's the whole point. It's the exchange to which you produce. But China can take it. The United States cannot.
Yeah,
that's the issue.
I was watching some where China has these factories where they can build. I think they said in 2 weeks they can make as many missiles as the U.S. has in its fleet, like 1,000 missiles a day or something. And that's probably nothing.
Yeah, they have weapons which immediately many people do not understand. That tells you about the strategic thinking of the Pentagon, which is really not strategic thinking. They think that if you have 800 bases around the world, that you somehow are powerful. You have 800 soft targets. That's what you have. And knowing what the U.S. air defense is, which is pretty much no air defense, you can be sure that the first thing which will go in flames will be Guam or whatever will be at that moment there. It's only 5 minutes, probably 7 minutes of flight, depending from whatever the southern parts of China you launch. And there you go. And the question now, and that's what many people forget, when Xi flew to Moscow, remember the gigantic delegation, in 2021?
Yes.
They removed everybody, and the only military people, and Xi and Putin have been sitting there for several hours behind closed doors. I'm going out on a limb here, and I can tell you one thing. Something tells me that Russia gave already Kinzhal hypersonic missiles to China, probably with the carriers, which could be now, we know, one of the things which many people do not understand. Su-34s are now capable of launch, not only capable, they've been launching them. And if USISR can, for example, track MiG-31s, MiG-31 is a large plane, okay?
Right.
And you know this. Oh, okay, if you have the MiG-31, which has nothing on the carriage except on the single missile on the belly, US will see it, and they immediately issue warning to Ukrainians. Now, Su-34s, of which Russia has hundreds, go figure what it carries. So it could be just regular tactical operation, tactical aircraft, or it could be, you know what, just prior to the what is called threatening period, you have to look and see how many of MiG-31s and the Su-34s from Russia fly to be deployed in China. Simple as that. It's really simple. And the range of Kinzhal alone is 2,000 kilometers. This is outranging by number of miles the next JASSM, which is JASSM extended range, which will be 1,900 kilometers. This is the funniest part. You know, so you can calculate how many F-18s on the carrier-based aviation, air wings of the U.S. carriers you need to launch what they think is decapitating, strike on the Chinese Navy, which is really funny. Chinese Army, Navy, whatever plan. So there you go. So it's missile exchange. Simple as that. That's what it's going to be. God forbid, of course.
Right, certainly. Your thoughts on the Russia-China alliance, Scott?
I mean, it's strategic in nature. I think my opinion is that China has, when I take a look at China's military, the lesson they've learned from Ukraine is there will be no long fight over Taiwan. That Taiwan will be finished in days, if not weeks. That they will overwhelm Taiwan with missile barrages that can't be intercepted. They will take out every major target. They will take out every major command and control node. They will suppress every aspect of Taiwan, and then they will flood Taiwan with troops, and Taiwan will be occupied before the U.S. Navy can leave San Diego. So I don't think there's going to be this missile exchange. I think the Chinese have made a decision that this is not going to be a long, drawn-out affair, that when the time comes to take Taiwan, they will take Taiwan with extreme violence and extreme rapidity to avoid the long, drawn-out campaign. Because even if you have this missile exchange concept, we're getting into a war of attrition, and it's a very dangerous concept. Again, I just want to remind everybody that the Biden administration has extended a line of strategic nuclear employment policy initiated with the Trump administration to China. We have redone our entire nuclear employment plan as we speak to be prepared to have a nuclear war with Russia and China at the same time.
And North Korea, all of them. Remember the last one, they added North Korea.
And so, and with China, one of the things, Theodore Postal, Andre, you know him, don't you?
Yeah,
MIT guy. Yeah.
He does some very interesting studies on nuclear warheads and on fusing. And one of the things that he talks about is a new fusing system that's gone on existing.
I know what you're talking about. No, it's not interesting.
Well, you say it's not interesting.
I wrote about it.
What it does, according to Theodore Postel, and according to nuclear war planners here in America, which is the only nuclear war planner that matters when we're talking about American nuclear war, it enables us to, instead of putting several warheads on a target, to actually disperse the targets, which we have to do if we're going to be doing a nuclear war against Russia and China at the same time, because where do we come up with the warheads? Right now, we have a nuclear warfighting plan designed to take out Russian mobile missiles, Russian.
Yeah, I wrote about this, yeah.
So it's, my point is that, I'm not saying that it's effective. I'm not saying it's going to win. It doesn't matter. Trump has built a war plan around this idea. And that's why I want to point out to people, Trump built this war plan. So for all the people are
Yeah.
saying, Scott, you're getting ahead of yourself. You don't know how Trump is going to behave. He wrote the war plan. Trump
Well,
wrote the war plan.
he armed Ukraine, for crying out loud, in his first term.
Yeah.
The whole
So this
thing
idea that
started
Trump is
in
a
earnest.
peacemaker is absurd in the extreme. He's not a peacemaker. He's a war maker. He was preparing for nuclear war. He's the one that rewrote our doctrine to talk about preemptive war, winnable nuclear war. And now we have him coming in with the plans that he initiated 4 years ago, reaching maturity. It's not as though he has to be briefed on these plans. He knows these plans. He's the one that led to the changes of the doctrine and the employment strategies. So I'm very, very, very concerned again that, Donald Trump is going to think that he can huff and puff and blow the house down with China. China and Russia have a strategic relationship that is predicated on the notion that the United States is an adversary, that the United States is seeking war with both of them. And therefore, they are positioning to prevail in a conventional conflict. And as Andre said, America doesn't have the number. We can't sustain anything. The bottom line is we don't have enough munitions to fight one war, let alone three at the same time. Taking on Russia, taking on Iran, taking on China. Oh, and meanwhile, Marco Rubio wants to go in and take on Venezuela while we're at it. So 4 regional conflicts is what the Trump administration is posturing. Now, they say, oh, he's not going to push for war. But what happens when his policies fail? And they will fail. Nobody in the world today is scared of Donald Trump. Nobody is scared of Donald Trump. And so what happens when he comes in and blusters, brings in this Keystone Cop team that he's assembling, and they come in and say, you must do. Do you remember when Jake Sullivan and Tony Blinken met with the Chinese premier early on in Alaska, and they tried to do we're America, we're great, and the Chinese went, shut up, we're China, we're better than you are. We will not be lectured by you ever again. It will never happen again. And yet Trump is assembling a team of lecturers who are going to come in. These aren't Russian experts. These aren't people that can sit down with a Sergei Lavrov and have an intellectual conversation. They can't sit down with their Chinese counterpart. All they can do is sit down and bluster and bluff and buffoon. And the Chinese and Russians, we don't want to have this conversation with you. We're not interested in this at all. And then what do? Go back to Trump and say, we failed? Replace us? No, they go into plan B, which is escalate. And then we get into the stupidity of Trump's notion of winnable nuclear war. Escalate to de-escalate. Usable nuclear weapons. Because that's all we have left. When they try the bluff and the bluff fails, there is no conventional military power there that can come in and save the day. It doesn't exist. And so it will be nuclear weapons. And this is why I'm so frustrated, because it didn't have to be this way. There are so many things that could have been done to avoid all of this. Again, the simplest thing Trump could do is call up Putin and say, yeah, we're scrapping the strategic defeat thing. That ain't going to happen. We're done with that. And so now we'd like to sit down with you and see where we go from there. And Putin is a reasonable man. He would say, okay, let's send in Lavrov, make this work. That's what he would say. Make it work. As long as we got rid of that. But if Trump doesn't scrap that, he comes in and he starts flexing and bluffing. This is going to lead to disaster, and we haven't even brought up Iran yet. That he's staffing his team with people that want to go to war with Iran on behalf of Israel, which will lead to a nuclear conflict. I mean, this is bad news all around.
Andre, your thoughts on this Iran thing? Iran have been saying for a couple of weeks they'll respond, but to Israel. But Iran always says we'll do it at a time and place of our choosing, so they don't seem to be in any big rush to. But Iran, from what we've seen, they have been apparently assisted with Russia, and they have indigenous capabilities that are extensive enough to, I believe, to some extent dominate the region. Your thoughts, and additionally, Russia's pretty tight with Iran. They're kind of starting to get the message out. Look, don't mess with Iran, or we're going to back them. One other thing that I want to throw at you, and you might have heard it. The rumors going around that the Israelis have been calling Moscow, calling the Kremlin, saying, "Hey, can you help us out?" Your thoughts on all of that?
Well, about Israelis, we'll start with this. I mean, and Scott knows this subject way better than me. But yeah, we understand that Israel militarily is in a pickle. Or as you say, in deep kimchi, as General Colonel Konstantin Polikovsky called it, the whole mythology of the military might of Israel has been blown, to smithereens. So they are in a desperation mode, and economically too. So naturally, obviously, there are many contacts between, first, quarter of Israeli population are Russian citizens, okay? So that's a huge deal. And the Russians obviously take care of their citizens now, And so they were calling. They are trying to establish contacts, and they do have contacts, obviously, including on the level of military people, serious military people. So I wouldn't be surprised that, I don't think so it's a rumor. I am pretty sure that they did call. That was even in the Israeli press. I believe Haaretz wrote about it, because they want Russia to be part of the solution. And Israel desperately needs solution. And they need somehow some kind of the break to even, have a gasp of the fresh air. Because evidently, from what I heard, I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. That indeed the IDF is on the verge of mutiny, at least in some parts of it. So it's a serious situation. And at this stage, I mean, least of all they want is to attack or deal with Iran. But considering what Iran has towards Israel, Iran may strategically estimate or assess that, okay, we need just teeny-weeny little push to take it overboard with the total implosion of the military political top of Israel, and who knows what comes next. So in this case, what could be this push? How about the response? And we know they can take out whatever they want in Israel, So that could be the consideration. I hope that Moscow talks to Tehran and tries to calm things down. And that's the hope will be my idea. Hope of Israel, also that this could be somehow, averted. That's my idea. I could be wrong.
Scott, let me ask you this, because I know you're familiar with this. Everything I'm reading, there's a lot of bluster from the Israelis. They got a lot of tough talk. Every day I read, I look, I research, and it seems like they're getting their asses kicked. It seems like things ain't going good for them, and that there is starting to be internal strife because there are people who are more responsible, which is a term I use loosely when I talk about Israeli leadership, but at least they're saying, hey man, we things are falling, the wheels are coming off the cart here. But Israel seems to be in collapse, run by a madman who can't seem to accept that things aren't going so well militarily. At any rate, your thoughts on it, just how bad a situation Israel is in internally, militarily, etc.
Well, I just want to remind everybody that in 2022 and 2023, prior to October 7th, Israel ran major exercises. I think the one in 2023 is called Operation Chariots of Fire, which stress tested the IDF's ability to fight a war against all enemies at the same time. And in both cases, it didn't end well. The fact is, it ended with Iranian intervention, and Israel had to have the United States on board. Now, interestingly enough, the United States participated in both exercises, to include in the in-game aspect of it, bringing in tankers and aircraft and doing the simulated strike packages against Iran, etc. But when it came down, push came to shove, we told the Israelis we're not doing that. But the other thing that came in was at the end of each scenario, Israel was confronted with a Samson option type situation. And I just want to remind people what the Samson option is. It's Israel's nuclear employment plan. Israel doesn't have preemptive nuclear strike plans. Israel doesn't believe in limited nuclear war. The Israeli nuclear plan is the Samson option, which is, as Israel goes down, it takes everything down with it. That's the reality. And it's been tested recently. As I said, in 2022 and 2023, they actually had to articulate, the same people, the same players that are there now had to articulate what the next step would be, what the Samson option would be, et cetera. And so when we talk about Iran pushing Israel over, there is no pushing Israel over. If Israel collapses, the Samson option is initiated. If Israel collapses from outside, there are people in Israel right now that are scared to death about this because they're looking at the situation and they're saying Israel's in free fall. Economically, it's a basket case. The military is stuck. They weren't meant to do what they're doing right now. They're not meant to be fighting in the field for this long. Morale is collapsing, logistically unsustainable. Hezbollah is just kicking the snot out of them. As Israel advances, Israel shows the same captured tunnels over and over and over again, that they captured early on in the fighting. They haven't held a village. They've gone into the villages and Hezbollah pushes them out of the villages. They try to advance and they just get waxed. Hezbollah is waiting for them. Hezbollah has the ambushes pre-planned. Hezbollah missiles are continuing to fire. All the people are saying, well, Israel took out Hezbollah's missiles. You realize that Hezbollah is playing an escalation management game. Every day, a new missile is unveiled of greater range and greater capability that strikes Israel, and Israel can't defend against this. The notion that Hezbollah has been defanged is absurd in the extreme. So now we have a situation. Oh, and it gets even better. I don't know. Did you see Seymour Hersh's recent Substack?
No.
About what's going on with Benjamin Netanyahu. He did that briefing the other day where he brought out the Hamas plan. Where he brought out a document. He said this was the Hamas plan for the hostages. Well, two things. One, he violated Israeli law two ways. One, that document is the most sensitive document in Israel today. It's maintained by Amman military intelligence in a room where you have to come in, sign in, and get permission to see it, and then you can only read it in that room. You can't take it with you. Netanyahu went in and got copies of it against the law. So he's in trouble there. There's a judge actively pursuing him right now. Two, he lied to the Israeli people because the way he presented this document, he said this is proof that's because he's saying Sinwar was going to flee to Egypt with the hostages and take them to Iran. But it's a 12-page document. And according to everybody familiar with it, they said the next 2 pages after the one that Benjamin Netanyahu quoted was Sinwar saying, this has been suggested to us, but we're not going to do it for the following reasons. So the Israelis know that that was a lie, but Netanyahu is lying to the Israeli people. Netanyahu has sabotaged every effort to get the hostages out. This is the end of Netanyahu politically right now. This is a huge crime that he has committed, and there is consequences. Israel's falling in on itself. So now what we have is the Israelis going to Russia because America has failed again. We cannot negotiate an end to this conflict. We have lost all credibility. Nobody trusts us. Nobody believes us. Russia, on the other hand, I think Andre mentioned it, Garland, you did. A quarter of the population of Israel today is of Russian or Soviet descent. The Russians have very, very strong ties with Israel. One of the most powerful men in Russia and Israel, Abramovich, is a billionaire, and you say, well, Scott, how could he be powerful? Well, I mean, he was in Turkey helping negotiate the release of prisoners of war, and he is a major behind the scenes player. And so Russia has been called upon, and Russia, here's the added advantage of Russia. They can go to Iran and say, okay,
right.
See, Russia can do what America can't, which is to be an effective, trusted mediator with Israel and Iran to try and wind this thing down, because Israel is in free fall, collapse, and the idiot Americans are going to start a war with Iran on behalf of Israel that could end in a nuclear strike. Again, I just want to remind people, the reason why Donald Trump brought in the B-61, the modified one, wasn't to strike Russia, Andre. It's the bomb that's used to take out Firdos and Natanz. The B-61 gravity bomb is specifically, this version is designed to take out Iranian nuclear targets. That's why they built the weapon. That's what it exists to do. And it's part of the employment plan. So when Trump starts a war with Iran and it goes south, and our 33 bases in the region are on fire and ships are sinking, and they say, Mr. President, we have to go to nuclear option 1001.3, and he rips open the peanut and goes, okay, launch the following codes. It's going to be nuclear weapons, B-61 bombs dropped by F-35 fighters against Iranian nuclear targets. This is the war plan as it exists. Russia is aware of this. And so Russia, I think, has a vested interest in being the trusted broker here. And you know who else is going to play a role in this? Because we come back to the strategic relationship between Russia and China. I can guarantee you that the hotline between Moscow and Beijing is ringing nonstop.
Yeah,
as
the
Russians say, hey, what can you bring to bear on this? What can you do? What can you bring to the table? We need to come in hard diplomatically to bring this thing down. How do we ratchet it down? And one of the things they have to do is convince the Iranians not to attack.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I think so Moscow is doing right now. It's
You know, Andre, we're almost at an hour, but I did want to ask you one last thing. And I know you don't know, but your thoughts on it, because I don't know what it would take to do this. One of the things that we've been seeing lately, every week or two, the Houthis there, or Ansar Allah, whatever you want to call them in Yemen, are shooting down another one of these MQ-9 Reaper drones, right? They've been shooting those. They're up to about 8 or 10 of these things now, right? And then one of the big global Hawk, 130 million, they're shooting these drones down. I didn't even know they had anti-aircraft capabilities. What kind of anti-aircraft capabilities do you think the Houthis have, and what does it take? I mean, I know these things aren't exactly B-52s or, stealth fighters, don't get me wrong, but what kind of level of technology does it take to shoot them down? I don't know. And your thoughts on that?
Good old S-200, good old Book M1, good old Assam. So it doesn't take much to really shoot them down. They are slow. And by the way, Reaper is actually kind of done with the stealth technology. It has the, carbon fiber, body, fuselage, and things like that. It has smaller signature, obviously, but yeah, you can see it, especially when you have the meter diapason or even decimeter diapason radar, which they do have since good old Soviet times. And yeah, that is why they shoot them down, because they have it. So what was the deal with the missiles? Because obviously missiles go, they get spoiled, they have expiration date. Hey, you know what? If you have the liquid missiles, for example, like V600, famous S-75 complex, yeah, it's liquid, all right? So just say, fuel it and just shoot at it. That's what it is. It's
so Iran has their own. I know they have the books and things like that, and they have some knockoff their own indigenous stuff.
Oh, plenty. Yeah, they have plenty of complexes. Yeah.
Right. So it sounds like to me maybe Iran's providing them. I do know that Hezbollah's done. So that maybe Iran provides these people with some of their indigenous stuff, and it's adequate.
Absolutely. You can have Iran has you can say knockoff, but they have their own version. It's definitely on the more advanced elemental base. It's not vacuum tubes anymore.
Right.
So it is solid body. They have they are even visually similar. The Asa. It's a 11-kilometer range, short distance, It's pretty modern enough to shoot down like 5-6 kilometer flying Reaper or Global Hawk, no problem. So, and again, they have a very good radar, and they can track those easily.
Okay. Well, guys, it's been an hour, so I certainly appreciate you taking busy time out of your week. Scott, everyone, go to scottritter.com. Scott's good work is there. And of course, when you go there, share that with everybody on your
sanctions out. Trump administration 2.0 is still 60 days away, and we are already hearing about how the 47th may undo American sanctions on Russia. Trump has previously said he does not like sanctions when it came to Russia. So it is highly likely that Trump may take a very different approach than the current commander in chief, Joe Biden. Trump's approach to foreign policy often revolves around forming personal ties with key leaders. As per retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, who has worked closely with Trump in the past, Trump sees sanctions and brute force as last resorts, not first options. This means that when it comes to issues like the Ukraine conflict, Trump might try to talk things out with Russian leader Vladimir Putin instead of imposing more sanctions. Kellogg told the Wall Street Journal that Trump would aim to find a way to work through a problem before considering harsher measures. First thing first, US and EU sanctions on Russia have failed miserably, but still they kept on piling thousands of sanctions on Moscow just for headline management. Trump's view on sanctions is different. He has previously mentioned that he does not love sanctions because they push countries away from the US. Now, if Trump decides to reduce or remove these sanctions, Russia could regain access to international markets that have been restricted. One area where this could have a major impact is Russia's Arctic LNG 2 project. The massive natural gas project is part of Russia's broader goal to become a leading global supplier of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. The Arctic LNG 2 plant is located along the Northern Sea Route, or NSR, which allows Russia to ship LNG to European and Asian markets faster than through traditional routes. If Trump administration were to loosen sanctions, Russia's Arctic LNG 2 project would have more room to grow. Without US restrictions, the project could receive more funding, work with more international players, and export LNG more freely. This would mean more jobs, more exports, and more revenue for Russia. This would be a big win for the Russian economy, as it could increase the country's power, muscles, and influence in the energy market. Some experts believe that Trump's personal connection with Vladimir Putin and his view on sanctions make it likely that he will ease US restrictions on Russia. Anna Subesic, an analyst for the data firm Kepler, suggests that Russia will definitely have more space to maneuver with Trump in office. With Trump's evolving priorities and his willingness to take a different approach from other US leaders, it is possible that he may soften the US stance on Russia. But then there are some hawkish voices as well. Steve Mnuchin, who served as the Secretary of the Treasury during Trump's first term, has called for imposing more sanctions on Russia. He also added that the current sanctions imposed have been more about making headlines and less about achieving real effectiveness. Russia is selling plenty of oil and gas, Mnuchin noted, highlighting the need for more impactful measures. But guess what? This Russia hawk leader has not been invited to join the Trump administration 2.0. Does that mean only pro Russia, China hawk, and pro India leaders are going to make it to Trump cabinet? Well, it looks so.
Over the past 24 hours, the situation of the Ukrainian army has deteriorated sharply almost along the entire combat contact line. However, Kurakovo and Kursk are still considered the most difficult directions of the front for Ukrainian troops. After Russian troops captured the entire unit of the 79th Separate Airborne Assault Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, war correspondents declared that units of the 114th Brigade of the Russian Army completed the cleanup of Ilyinka and completely liberated this settlement. Let me remind you that the first reports of the liberation of the village of Ilyinka by Russian troops appeared 8 days ago. However, back then, the western part of this village remained in the so-called gray zone. And now, 8 days later, on November 13, 2024, soldiers of the 114th Brigade of the Russian Army completed the liberation of Ilyinka and raised the Red Victory banner in the western part of this settlement. According to war correspondents, as of November 14, 2024, the settlement of Ilyinka was completely cleared of the Ukrainian army units. Currently, all Ukrainian soldiers fled to the village of Berestki, west of Ilyinka. However, judging by what is happening on the battlefield, the Ukrainian army units will also have to leave the village of Berestki shortly. According to war correspondents, Russian troops, without giving the enemy a break, have already begun to storm the settlement of Berestki. It is reported that the future liberation of this settlement will allow the Russian army to take control of the entire northern coast of the Kurakovo Reservoir. In turn, this will allow the Russian army to start shelling the Ukrainian army units located in the city of Kurakovo, even with the help of conventional mortars and machine guns. In Kurakovo itself, Ukrainian soldiers and officers are well aware of the hopelessness of the situation and understand perfectly well that they will not be able to hold the city. At the same time, they still live in hope for a miracle. They hope that the Ukrainian general staff will soon give the order to leave the city. However, these poor Ukrainian soldiers and officers will never receive such an order. The fact is that the Kiev regime, led by Vladimir Zelensky, desperately needs Ukrainian soldiers to resist until their last breath in every locality, in order to slow down the offensive of the Russian army and prolong its miserable existence. And this regime absolutely does not care how many lives of Ukrainian soldiers and officers will have to be sacrificed for this. Commenting on the situation in Ukraine, retired senior Pentagon official Stephen Bryan said that based on the current realities on the battlefield, Vladimir Zelensky has only 3 options left to get out of this critical situation. These are negotiations with Moscow on Russia's terms, resignation, and complete surrender. Stephen Bryan stated this in his article for the magazine Weapons and Strategy. According to him, the fate of Ukraine and Vladimir Zelensky personally, literally hangs in the balance. Stephen Bryan claims that still the current president of the United States, Joe Biden, is making last-ditch attempts to prolong the life of the Kiev authorities led by Zelensky. Very soon, Biden will ask Congress to provide more than $9 billion in emergency defense aid to Ukraine. And the future fate of not only this Eastern European country but also Vladimir Zelensky himself will largely depend on this aid. At the same time, Stephen Bryan noted that even if Congress approves the next aid to Ukraine, Washington will not be able to help Kyiv, since the United States has run out of all weapons stocks. Vladimir Zelensky probably understands perfectly well that Ukraine will no longer be able to receive all the necessary financial and military assistance from the United States. Whether this will be enough for Zelensky to decide to start negotiations with Moscow is difficult to say. However, given the fact that Ukraine is almost completely destroyed, Vladimir Zelensky will either have to resign or sign an act of capitulation, retired senior Pentagon official Stephen Bryan said. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation officially announced that as of November 14, 2024, in the Kursk region, the Ukrainian army had lost 31,700 soldiers, 41 multiple launch rocket systems, including 8 M270 MLRS, and 12 American HIMARS missile systems, 210 tanks, 14 counter-battery radars, and 65 electronic warfare systems. According to the Russian military department, the Ukrainian High Military Command, together with military advisors from the North Atlantic Alliance, lost a full-fledged army corps created according to NATO standards in the Kursk region. And at the same time, Ukraine and NATO failed to achieve any of their goals in the Kursk region. The huge losses of the Ukrainian army in the Kursk region are also recognized by Western military experts from numerous American and European analytical centers. According to them, the heavy losses of the Ukrainian army in the Kursk region are felt especially acutely against the backdrop of numerous defeats of Ukrainian troops in the Kurakovo and Pokrovsk directions of the front. As for the Kursk direction of the front, it is worth noting that today, the Ukrainian Telegram channels finally admitted that the Russian army had knocked out the Ukrainian army units from such settlements as Deriino, in the south, and Pogrebki, in the north of this Russian region. Moreover, on November 13, at 3 p.m. Moscow time, sources in the Russian military department reported that Ukrainian and NATO soldiers, who were surrounded in the Olgovsky forest and near the settlement of Tolsty Lug, made another desperate attempt to break out of the encirclement. However, this attempt to escape from the trap was unsuccessful. It is reported that the Russian Marines dealt a crushing blow to the enemy forces, trying to break out of the encirclement. With heavy losses in manpower and equipment, the Ukrainian and NATO soldiers had to retreat again. At the same time, the Russian Marines note that the Ukrainian military command and the NATO leadership still do not abandon attempts to rescue trapped Ukrainian and NATO soldiers. At the same time, Ukrainian and NATO generals pay special attention to the area near the settlement of Tolsty Lug, where, according to the Russian side, not only NATO soldiers but also 3 U.S. Army colonels are surrounded. It is known for certain that a few days before, Russian Marines offered these U.S. Army officers to surrender or die. And judging by what is happening in the Kursk region right now, the enemy is not going to give up yet. Many Russian experts are sure that if the U.S. Army officers fail to get out of the encirclement, the Pentagon leadership, with the help of Ukrainian soldiers, will eliminate them, to hide Washington's participation in the development and conduct of the Ukrainian army's military operation on the territory of the Russian Federation.
Russia has so far stayed away from the conflict in Middle East. Not anymore. Israel is now shifting some of its focus towards Russia to help bring peace to its conflict with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel's Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer has made a quiet visit to Russia, hinting that Israel may be looking to Moscow for assistance in brokering a ceasefire. Question is, Israel is America's biggest ally. Why is it seeking Moscow's support? Well, Russia holds significant influence in Syria, a country closely allied with Iran, and this gives it a unique position in the conflict. Syria is a vital link in supplying weapons from Iran to Hezbollah. Israel is worried about Hezbollah rearming, and Russia's cooperation could help cut off this supply chain. As simple as that. If Russia helps broker peace, it may reduce Hezbollah's ability to launch further attacks and help restore stability along Israel's northern border. For over a year, Hezbollah has frequently launched attacks from Lebanon using rockets and drones that have caused serious damage and even fatalities. Israel responded with a large-scale military operation that has caused heavy losses for Hezbollah. Not to mention that Israel now believes there is hardly much that the US can achieve in Lebanon. US Special Envoy Amos Hochstein is expected to visit Lebanon soon to discuss peace efforts with Lebanese politicians. However, there is a sense of doubt in Lebanon about whether Hochstein can actually achieve much, as previous attempts have failed. Although Hochstein seems hopeful about securing an agreement between Israel and Hezbollah, some officials question if the US has enough influence to bring this conflict to a halt. And that is why Russia's role has become so relevant here. A Russian delegation also arrived in Israel recently. While the visit's official purpose was not tied to the conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon, it underlined Russia's role as a mediator in the region. Given the complex alliances and ongoing hostilities, Russia's diplomacy could influence how the conflict unfolds. Mind you, the ongoing conflict is more than just Israel versus Hezbollah. It has drawn in Iran and its allies across the Middle East. Iran has twice directly fired rockets and drones at Israel, sparking Israeli retaliation. This back and forth has fueled an already tense situation, with Iran threatening further retaliation after Israel's last round of strikes. Since October last year, attacks from Lebanon and Syria have caused significant casualties. In northern Israel, 41 civilians have been killed in attacks from Lebanon. In addition, 62 Israeli soldiers and reservists have lost their lives in skirmishes and operations in southern Lebanon. There have been drone attacks from Iraq, leading to the deaths of 2 Israeli soldiers, although attacks from Syria have not led to any injuries so far. So Israel's current outreach to Russia may show a willingness to consider any partner who could help stabilize the region, even if it means working with countries like Russia that have strong ties to Syria and Iran. If Russia can broker a deal, it could ease tensions not only between Israel and Hezbollah, but also between Israel and Iran. While the US is still involved in the talks, its influence might be limited, especially given the shifting US administration. This might explain why Israel is increasingly interested in what Russia could achieve, even if it is a surprising alliance.
Let's talk about this UFO hearing today, the second big congressional UFO hearing today in Congress. We finally moved past the bullshit, everyone. Finally, 0 point energy, the actual technology is finally starting to get discussed here. Yes, like we've already established, the United States government has alien bodies. They have biologics. That's already on the record from the last congressional hearing. We don't need to rehash that. Yes, the United States government has these advanced technologies. Yes, the United States government has these crashed UFOs. They've had them for decades. Basically, any idiot knows that by now, or you're just willfully ignorant. So we don't need to rehash all of that once again. Now, you had Michael Schellenberger there, journalist Michael Schellenberger, Luis Elizondo. You had a number of other individuals, Rear Admiral Tim Godet also there speaking. So you had some pretty powerhouse individuals speaking in front of the Congress today. Michael Schellenberger put out 212 pages of UFO evidence and government cover-ups to Congress. He handed that over. In fact, he had to basically tell Congress, hey, you guys, there's a secret program at the Pentagon. It's called Immaculate Constellation. You guys should probably know more about it. And that's one of the big things that they were discussing today during this hearing, that they have thousands of high-quality UFO images, videos, FLIR camera images, all of it. You had Luis Elizondo, of course, who worked in the Pentagon. He just stated under oath that the government UAP program secrecy is, quote, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. We all know that, but watch.
Over the last decade and a half, I learned that certain UAP programs were and are operating without any of these elements. Although much of my government work on the UAP subject still remains classified, excessive secrecy has led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos.
Yes, we are not alone in the cosmos. I think we all know that. And some very important, though, on the record discussions but how these alien craft travel using etheric energy. We're done past the bodies part of this whole hearing. We got that. We know that we have bodies, right? We know that we have the craft. So how exactly are they traveling? And finally, we started getting questions about etheric energy, about 0 point energy. I encourage you to watch my deep dive interview about the disappearance of MH370 Malaysian Airlines with physicist Ashton Forbes. I think it has almost 2 million views here on the channel. I go and watch that interview. He's astonishing. Nikola Tesla knew about etheric energy. And then, of course, they stole all those documents and they hid all of this technology right after he died. The FBI did, of course. So the UFOs have a way of extracting energy from the environment, from the air, negative energy, and it's all free. That's the thing. All of this energy is free. And so this is one of the big disclosure things we might now see under Tulsi Gabbard as head of the Director of National Intelligence. Also, the new director of the CIA, which we'll get to in a second. So a lot of big revelations specifically around the technologies piece during this 2-hour hearing today, which I watched. But Representative Luna asks specifically about UFO energy sources and whether or not it would impact humanity for the better or for the worse. Of course, it would be for the better, but, we got to do this little dog and pony show, but watch.
Perspective is A, that true? B, are you guys hearing the reports of that? And C, I think moving forward in regards to technology, Mr. Gold, if you can answer this real quickly, some of these aircraft, it seems that they are operating off of energy that we don't currently have. But just yes or no, in your opinion, if we were able to obtain that, would that impact humanity for the better or negative?
Would certainly save us some money on funding on Artemis.
Definitely.
And this is a national security issue that if there is such technology out there, we're not the only country that might have access to it. We don't want to be on the wrong end of technological surprise.
So yes, we have this technology. We've been using it for a long time. All of this technology is well known within the United States government. You're not idiots. And it's being used by the United States government as we speak. During this hearing today, whistleblower Rear Admiral Tim Godet said we have satellite video of UFOs, lots of them, in fact, and hopefully Congress will make mandatory to release these videos to the public. Again, he's an admiral. He sees it all. And by the way, he's specifically been on the beat talking about all of the underwater UFOs that have in the ocean off of U.S. Navy craft, that they see them regularly. Talk to any person who's been on one of these U.S. Navy destroyers for any length of time. They've all seen them, by the way. Talk to them. Journalist Michael Schellenberger said we have full motion video, FLIR camera videos, infrared videos of UFOs. And by the way, he talked about low Earth orbit satellites. So we have all of these low Earth orbit satellites that are able to capture in color these UFOs, full color video, just like this. This one was leaked by a whistleblower, of course. This is MH370, the missing Malaysian Airlines. And watch as the 3 UFOs that in perfect triangular formation come right around MH370. And zoom right here. Here, there's the second one. And here the third UFO comes in. And then you'll watch as then, of course, using this etheric energy, the 0-point technologies, make the craft disappear. And so the United States government is responsible for this. Watch as then the airliner disappears. Right here, I believe. Right after this cloud. Watch. Here we go. This is an unbelievable video. And it's been confirmed. This is 10-year-old video, by the way. There we go. Disappears. And that aircraft, of course, gone. What? So 0-point technologies, they've been recovered from these UFOs. The United States government has them. The capabilities of this technology are monumental. We're talking faster than light travel. Imagine never needing to get in an airplane again because we already have this technology, but they're keeping it from you because they like to charge you for energy, of course. Instantaneous travel, unlimited energy that's pulled from the atmosphere. By the way, Trump's new head of the CIA, I'm hoping that he is going to disclose this. This is John Ratcliffe. He has been pushing for UFO disclosure. He will now be at the head of the CIA. He was trying to get this done while he was head of DNI or at DNI. Now Tulsi Gabbard will be at DNI. So hopefully as head of the CIA under Trump, we'll see more of this. So yeah, more on, and by the way, we're trying to get the Rear Admiral Tim Godot on the show. I've been emailing with him. So hopefully we'll have the Rear Admiral. He just testified in front of Congress today. And to have him come on and talk about some of these technologies that he's seen as Admiral in the United States Navy.
Well, we're seeing a media melt.
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
No,
I just want to chime in. Like, so if they do like disclose this, and we find out that the government knew they were there, but didn't want to tell us, like that's one thing. But if they come to find out that they've had this technology, they have 0-point energy, and they know how to use it, like we should all be incredibly pissed that they've kept that from us. Because like they basically set us back. Yeah. And so like if it comes out that they've actually have that technology, I'll be pissed.
They have. And I've spoken to sources that know of this. And one of the sources I spoke to, an expert, watched as they used this technology on a human limb that was missing, and they were able to regrow the limb. So not only it's travel, ultra fast travel, lightning fast travel, but also the health implications of this technology. It's astonishing, and we should all be pissed about it. Think about eliminating cancer. Like we have the technology that eliminates cancer. Mm-hmm. We have the technology that doesn't make me have to go to the frickin' airport and wait in 6-hour flight delays to travel somewhere. I could go there instantaneously, but they keep it from us.
What do you mean, by beaming?
I'm talking about 0-point energy, fast travel, light travel. So they have this technology. They're using it. They're keeping it from us. And I'm glad
but why wouldn't you have to go to the airport? You could do 0-point technology from your house.
Maybe. Have you ever seen Star Trek? I could just stand on a teleporter pad and be able to go. I don't know how exactly it would work in practice. And what sort of craft. But anyway, now we're getting into like,
I didn't realize that this was consumer-based technology.
It will be.
Okay.
It could be. Well, I mean, when Nikola Tesla had it and had I mean, that's the thing. When he died and they went to his apartment in New York City and the FBI took all of his materials.
Yes. Yeah.
And they hid it from us because he had discovered etheric energy and his plans to make all energy free to all of us, where we wouldn't have to pay an energy company at all.
All right.
I mean, come on, people, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up.
We will now examine the extensive fabrications and deceptions promoted by NASA and other space agencies that have constructed a completely fictitious narrative and framework of cosmology and the Earth. The first moon landing event occurred on July 20th, 1969, when NASA's Apollo 11 mission allegedly landed astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the lunar surface, while Michael Collins orbited above in the command module. The official story states that Neil Armstrong became the first human to step onto the moon, followed by Buzz Aldrin. Let us first explore the significant events and key figures that contributed to the inaugural moon landing and subsequent developments. We will then address many concerns regarding the authenticity of this historical event. This will sharpen our discernment and help expose this elaborate psyop that, as of recording this, diverts into itself an astonishing $72 million per day in taxpayer funding. Soon after their historic mission, all 3 astronauts of Apollo 11 resigned. The image from their first television press conference below captures their somber expressions and reflects the overall atmosphere of this mysterious interview. A stark contrast to the jubilation one would surely expect based on one of mankind's greatest achievements in history. The astronauts' reluctant replies and uneasy behavior, coupled with an atmosphere that many perceive as incredulous, render the interview quite a mystery, resembling a calamity rather than a celebration of 3 men brimming with pride and enthusiasm. James Webb, NASA's top official, unexpectedly resigned just days before the first Apollo mission launched. This departure was unexplained and came at a time when he was on the verge of witnessing what would have been the pinnacle of his professional career. An interesting photograph from 1965 shows NASA's George Mueller, on the right, visiting the MGM studio, where film producer Stanley Kubrick, second from the right, was preparing to shoot the famous space movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. Also visible in the photograph are Arthur C. Clarke in the middle, a British science fiction writer, and Professor Teofilo Tabanera of the Argentine Space Concession following behind. Many find this photograph to further assert a studio-based moon landing. All original Apollo 11 slow-scan television tapes, which allegedly contained the raw footage and telemetry data of the 1969 moon landing, remain entirely lost to this day. Even more suspicious, NASA later erased and recorded over other key tapes that allegedly held the original high-quality video recordings of the moonwalk, citing a supposed shortage of magnetic tapes during the 1970s and 1980s. With its substantial resources and government backing, how could NASA face difficulties in procuring magnetic tapes to safeguard the epic footage of their first lunar voyage? The loss of such critical historical material is all the more perplexing. Surely, public or private entities could have even donated magnetic tapes to preserve this historic achievement. Many publicly available photos, allegedly taken from the lunar surface, intentionally obscure the true source of light, rendering it completely blocked out from view. This consistent pattern, where a strong light source is present in almost all similar photographs, clearly obscures the true origin of the illumination, whether it is truly the sun or artificial stage lighting. This deliberate obfuscation fuels further speculation about the actual source of light in these photographs. We also find instances where an astronaut's suit is brightly lit, even though it is on the side opposite from the sun and completely shadowed by the lunar module. This discrepancy raises questions about how the rear side of the lunar lander and the astronaut can appear fully illuminated while also being fully engulfed in the lander's shadow, given that the sun is the only light source that should be on the moon. Another obvious example of the presence of multiple light sources in these photographs is evidenced by the extreme difference in shadow directions. The significantly divergent shadow directions cannot be simply attributed to an optical illusion of perspective, as many NASA supporters posit, especially to the degree of divergence we see. Another highly scrutinized aspect of the 1969 lunar module's descent onto the moon's surface is the complete absence of a blast crater or any disturbance beneath its landing site. The thruster of the module was said to produce 10,000 pounds of thrust, while again, no imprint, scorching, or any remnant whatsoever of this unimaginable heat and thrust was left under the lunar module, not even dust or debris on the landing pads. Further evidence that the 1972 moon landing was an elaborate hoax, as well as the 1969 moon landing, is found in an image that captures raindrops, each forming streaks of identical length due to the camera's shutter speed, perfectly aligned and descending at identical angles. This was NASA's very last photograph taken from the moon. Was the studio production
Revolutionary salute to our Queen Yaya's kids for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is way of life. I absolutely appreciate the love, Queen. Salute to you.
rained out, so to speak? As many are aware, an endless multitude of collective evidence could be presented to challenge the authenticity of the moon landings. Yet such an in-depth analysis lies beyond the scope of our overall goal. The moon landing controversy alone would span numerous volumes, given the extensive information available and all of the skeptical hindsight we have accumulated up to modern day. A leaked videotape from the Apollo 11 mission shows the 3 astronauts using the command module's circular window to fabricate false images of a spherical Earth. They also used a sheet of paper to create the illusion of a Terminator line, which marks the division between night and day. By darkening the cabin lights, the exterior walls of the window mimicked the blackness of space, thus producing the illusion of a spherical Earth captured from a distance. The astronauts captured only a small portion of the Earth through the circular window, where clouds mingled with land, producing these misleading images. Recordings of their communications with Mission Control discuss, quote, refining the realism of images in post-production. Most important, the command module's circular window was deliberately used to crop more of the Earth's surface from view. These deceptively cropped images imply that more of the Earth was not captured outside of the circular window. Consider the implications here. We have been taught that Earth is spherical, but a complete, unobstructed image of Earth was never captured from the command module. Instead, what we see is only a partial view of Earth, framed by the command module's circular window, and artificially enhanced with a simulated Terminator line to increase realism. Many public images that purport to show the Earth from the moon's surface have been exposed as fallacious composites created by superimposing falsely produced photographs of a spherical Earth onto separate photographs of a lunar surface. The credibility of NASA imagery is further called into question by an interview with NASA's senior program analyst who is responsible for creating Blue Marble 2.0. Robert Simon states that complete photographs of Earth do not exist. What we see are digitally crafted composites. He further adds, it is photoshopped, but it has to be. Images of Earth are constructed using datasets, multiple strips of satellite images pieced together to produce what appears to be a realistic depiction of Earth. This further solidifies doubts about the authenticity of photographic evidence from the Apollo 11 mission. How can we place any real trust in these images, or any others, when NASA's own senior program analyst admits that there are no complete photographs of the Earth? The Telegraph, on August 29, 2009, reported, curators at Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum, where the rock has attracted tens of thousands of visitors each year, discovered that the lunar rock, valued at £308,000, was in fact petrified wood. The rock was given to Willem Dries, a former Dutch leader, during a global tour by Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, following their moon mission 50 years ago. NASA gave moon rocks to more than 100 countries following lunar missions in 1969 and the 1970s. The United States Embassy in The Hague is carrying out an investigation into the affair. Are you aware that every NASA rocket launch in history follows an arcing trajectory, curving back down toward the vast expanse of the ocean, rather than actually ascending into space? To date, no space agency has ever presented video evidence of a rocket ascending in a continued vertical trajectory beyond low Earth orbit and into deep space. This absence of footage is attributed to our new understanding that a direct upward course would expose the boundary of our contained world upon contact. This continued practice should now begin to reveal that NASA and other space agencies only create the appearance of rockets heading into space. In reality, their trajectories always curve downward soon after launch, eventually returning to Earth, consistently over the open ocean, as observed in every rocket launch in history. The only exception to this were the rockets involved in Operation Fishbowl, mentioned earlier, which were part of an effort to investigate the limits of the Earth's upper bounds through a series of detonations impacting against it. This consistent practice prevents extended observation of the rocket's true trajectory, leaving unresolved whether the rocket is actually heading into outer space or merely arcing toward a predetermined splashdown in the ocean, thereby perpetuating a deceptive portrayal of an authentic space launch. This notable omission is difficult to rationalize, especially considering that since 1969, not a single space agency has documented such an event. Video recordings of launches always terminate shortly after liftoff, just as the rocket begins its predictable downward trajectory toward the ocean. We might begin to realize that the only thing ever sent to space has been our imagination. Throughout the history of space exploration, the release of an uninterrupted video capturing a rocket's complete ascent into space could have decisively demonstrated that no physical barrier hinders access to space. Such evidence would have dispelled any notion that rockets are merely returning to restricted ocean areas as part of a deceptive act. This oversight is as hard to believe as an architect designing a skyscraper without including elevators, a fundamental element inexplicably absent from the records of space exploration and rocket launch history. The behavior of amateur rockets as they ascend to higher altitudes is both remarkable and significant to our discussion, particularly as they demonstrate clear interactions with this upper boundary in question. Unlike rockets launched by NASA and other space agencies, which always follow a deliberate arcing trajectory back toward the Earth, amateur rockets ascend directly upward. In 2014, Go Fast Sports launched a rocket that broke world records for altitude and speed. Intriguingly, the rocket abruptly halted at 73.1 miles in altitude, as if caught in quicksand, without any explosion or visible damage. This sudden stop clearly revealed an interaction with an unseen boundary. Surprisingly, the rocket was neither destroyed nor visibly damaged, and successfully reached an orbital phase. In 2017, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket grazed along a mysterious upper layer, creating an effect similar to gliding on a liquid surface, complete with visible ripples and waves. The following images document the event, displaying a trail that resembles rippling water streaming behind the rocket. This visual phenomenon manifests upon contact with the mysterious boundary, showing no prior signs of this effect before impact. NASA astronaut Don Pettit in 2016 stated, "I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is, we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again." How can we reasonably accept that more than 50 years after the last moon landings in 1972, the technology from a far less advanced era is now beyond recovery? Displayed here is a series of official NASA Earth images spanning from 1972 to 2015. These images display several noticeable inconsistencies, including variations in the sizes of continents. When viewed in color at high resolution on NASA's website, they strikingly resemble cartoons. In countless video interviews, allegedly from the International Space Station, female astronauts are clearly seen to have their hair rigidly set, presumably by hairspray, as it springs back to its original position with each movement of their head. This lack of natural free-flowing movement stands in contrast to what one would anticipate in an authentic zero-gravity setting of space. Despite several rigorous head movements, the astronaut's hair snaps back to its original position from the start of the interview, as if it were on springs, instead of drifting freely as one would surely anticipate in the zero-gravity environment of space. Why would there be a need to orchestrate such an effect when untethered, free-floating hair would naturally occur in a low-gravity setting? If stray hair were a practical concern, simple solutions such as wearing a NASA-branded hat or tying the hair back in a bun or ponytail would suffice. Instead, NASA constructs the illusion of a weightless environment in a way that is so unconvincing even a child would question its authenticity. Numerous instances have been documented in publicly available videos where air bubbles emerge from astronauts' suits during alleged spacewalks on the ISS. Additionally, reflections in astronauts' visors reveal a scuba diver complete with an oxygen tank operating a video camera. On July 16, 2013, an astronaut's helmet filled up with water during an alleged spacewalk involving Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano. This clearly reveals that spacewalks are not from space, but quite evidently from NASA's Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory in Houston, Texas. This massive underwater training facility, housing an ISS replica, is designed to simulate the zero-gravity environment of space. Many public NASA videos display unmistakable anomalies. The following appears to show a genuine video interview from the ISS. However, a subsequent extended video glitch clearly exposes the use of a separate video layer onto which the astronauts have been superimposed onto a separate ISS video layer background. Many public ISS video interviews clearly show outlines and impressions of harness wires on astronauts' clothing, particularly during stunts such as rolls or flips, clearly indicating their use for artificial support. In other videos, these harnesses are left visible, assuming a failure of video editing techniques intended to conceal them. While our low-resolution images may not clearly reveal these details, the abundance of online videos makes the deception unmistakably evident. On August 23, 2023, India supposedly landed on the moon. As expected, the public only sees the initial launch footage from this significant lunar mission. Live coverage was immediately discontinued moments thereafter. This again demonstrates that, to this day, there is no continuous video documentation available of any journey to the moon, even in our most modern technological era in history. Incredible video footage that would have captivated audiences worldwide remains mysteriously unreleased. Subsequently, the only photographic or video representations of the lunar lander and command module released later to the public and not live were poorly produced computer-generated images of merely cartoon quality at best. Accompanying these were low-resolution and dubious short video clips showing the module hovering over the moon, characterized by unsteady and very poor frame rates. The following official images are from the Chandrayaan-3 mission that purport to evidence this voyage to the moon that once again a child can quickly discern as entirely fallacious. Remarkable, given that this is all that is provided to us during an era of unparalleled technology. In January 2019 and June 2024, the Chinese Space Agency allegedly landed their probes on the moon. For both of these missions, the public was only shown the launch, with no subsequent video footage of the journey to the moon or images of the Earth during the ascent into space. Given China's status as a technology powerhouse, the absence of visual documentation and coverage from these missions is confounding. The only visuals provided were generic scenes from a mission control room filled with applause. All available images and videos, including those purporting to show the lunar lander on the moon, are of such poor computer-generated quality that even the least discerning eye can quickly recognize their inauthenticity. The few images provided that depict the moon's surface lack any semblance of authenticity, even at first glance. Can we finally confront the reality of our blind and trusting acquiescence to such deceitful fabrications? We have become too complacent, settling for the absolute minimum, a fleeting headline, the sight of a rocket climbing the sky, and a handful of dubious images alleged as evidence. This is an affront to the public's intelligence and their entitlement as taxpayers to an acceptable level of proof of such alleged monumental space endeavors. Could our enchantment with the concept of outer space play a part, fueled by dreams of moon bases and interstellar tourism? Is it the allure of space exploration, amplified by the science fiction of Hollywood, that has us so blindly trusting to believe such sparse evidence without innate skepticism? The topic of extraterrestrial life and unidentified flying objects is so vast and multifaceted that it could be the focus of innumerable volumes. Public fascination with aliens and UFOs surged in the mid-20th century, notably with events such as the Roswell, New Mexico incident and the mysteries surrounding Area 51. This surge was rather timely, coinciding perfectly with the dawn of space exploration. This captivation has endured, continually fueled by a proliferation of space and alien-themed films, along with a continuing cultural preoccupation with UFOs and aliens. Is it possible that the concept of aliens and UFOs was entirely fabricated and propagated to lend further credibility to the existence of outer space? Should a boundary around our Earth be confirmed, as we intend to demonstrate, the entire notion of aliens and UFOs would immediately become purely fictional and obsolete. I believe that any legitimate reports of UFOs or mysterious aerial events which are not based on unsubstantiated claims or ambiguous videos are potentially orchestrated by space agencies like NASA. This is done to promote and reinforce the concept of infinite space, entirely contrary to our contained system, which was discovered. Given NASA's extensive budget, it is certainly possible that considerable resources could be allocated to deceptively stage and simulate encounters or incidents with aliens and UFOs, past, present, and in the future, as part of a broader agenda. Such an agenda could be crafted to effectively unify the world's population by staging a manufactured crisis, specifically a fake alien incident of sorts that necessitates worldwide unity. This would lay the necessary groundwork for creating a single worldwide government and possibly a universal currency, a planned agenda that many have warned of for decades. This could expand the role of an existing international organization, such as the United Nations, to become the world government, paving the way for a new world order. Historically implemented by rulers and governments for centuries, this is known as order out of chaos. It involves deliberately creating a crisis to force a pre-planned resolution when people are most desperate for it. This agenda might not be as hard to imagine, given that the Latin phrase novus ordo seclorum, new order of the ages, has long been inscribed on the US $1 bill, quite synonymous to say the least. It is also noteworthy that the US $1 bill features pagan symbology, such as the all-seeing eye, alongside imagery reminiscent of a pyramid from ancient civilizations. What connection could possibly exist between the United States, ancient pagan cultures, and the all-seeing eye that continues to persist on the US $1 bill to this day? When will we acknowledge the growing evidence of a grand and carefully crafted deception? To what extent are we willing to ignore our intuition, logic, common sense, and reason merely to conform to popular consensus, go with the flow, or avoid confronting internal conflicts and thereby deny deeper truths? It should become clear that the concept of outer space has been entirely fabricated with a discernible motive. When considering the existence of dinosaurs, we must first acknowledge that the vast majority of these creatures are without question conceptual inventions rather than scientifically accurate depictions of Earth's inhabitants. These highly skeptical representations are prevalent not only in the captivating illustrations found in textbooks, but also in what can be best described as imaginative artwork in museum exhibits. These artfully crafted depictions of prehistoric life forms primarily serve to promote the evolutionary agenda and reinforce the notion of a history extending back millions of years. Defined by modern science, paleontology is the study of ancient life through the examination of fossils. This field seeks to reconstruct the history, evolution, and environments of extinct organisms by analyzing their remains and traces. As an interdisciplinary field, paleontology combines elements of biology, geology, and chemistry, utilizing techniques such as excavation, laboratory analysis, and comparative anatomy to explore past life and ecosystems. Sir Richard Owen was a prominent British biologist, paleontologist, and comparative anatomist who lived from 1804 to 1892.
Vanessa.
He is best known for his contributions to paleontology, including coining the term dinosaur, meaning terrible lizard, in 1842 to describe a distinct group of prehistoric reptiles. The initial claim of a dinosaur discovery was made by William Buckland in the early 19th century near Oxford, England. His most notable find consisted merely of a partial lower jaw with teeth and assorted fragments of limb and vertebral bones. Despite the lack of anything approaching a complete skeleton, these sparse and highly incomplete remains were deemed sufficient by Buckland to speculate about the existence of a previously unrecognized giant reptilian creature. He quickly described this creature as Megalosaurus in 1824, marking one of the first purported identifications of what would later be classified as a dinosaur. It is crucial to recognize the extreme scarcity of skeletal remains at the onset of the dinosaur fossil discovery era, and the extent of far-reaching conjecture involved in reconstructing these creatures from mere fragments into fully illustrated life forms. This entire narrative, from the outset, was quite clearly built on highly speculative and conjectural imagination. Despite the extreme scarcity of fossil finds, the era of dinosaur discovery experienced rapid expansion, with newly described species quickly added to the growing body of known species. However, we must approach with skepticism the immediate assertion that these fossil remains are millions of years old. We have to consider that many of these discovered specimens might actually belong to a far more recent era, or might not represent new species at all, given the highly limited fossil evidence supporting such claims. Many of us commonly assume that the detailed depictions and illustrations of dinosaurs that we see in academic books and museum exhibits are based on the discovery of complete skeletal fossil remains, allowing for an accurate depiction in their structure and anatomy. In reality, the opposite is true. These depictions rely on highly incomplete fossil remains, fueling the inherent skepticism that continues to surround the dinosaur narrative from the start. The lack of substantial academic documentation only further fuels skepticism about these alleged findings. Initially, a flurry of discoveries occurred within a short span, and the eagerness to construct these creatures through vivid illustrations not only raises questions, but also strongly suggests an underlying agenda. Consider a scenario in which numerous large crocodiles and their remnants, still found today in Oxfordshire, England, display physical characteristics remarkably similar to those attributed to Megalosaurus and various other supposed dinosaurs, aligning closely with the depiction of giant lizards. We must recognize that fossil remains are typically discovered in a disarticulated state, often highly incomplete and fragmented, resembling merely a few scattered pieces of an extensive puzzle. Could these findings actually represent an extinct genus within the crocodile family, rather than entirely new and distinct species? Further investigation raises a compelling question. Could disarticulated crocodile bones be rearranged into a skeletal structure in any chosen posture, mimicking what is currently recognized as a dinosaur when positioned strategically? This possibility certainly exists, both historically and in present times. These bones could even be manipulated into a bipedal arrangement, further reinforcing the traditional depiction of dinosaur anatomy and posture for many of those we commonly recognize today. Consider the typical crocodile skull, which in many ways bears a striking resemblance to those of many alleged dinosaur species. Now imagine this skull as fragmented and highly incomplete, providing ample opportunity for constructing any desired interpretation, which is then depicted in detailed illustrations as a complete skull. We can further acknowledge that different reconstructors inevitably yield different results, clearly illustrating that these attempted reconstructions should not be regarded as accurate to begin with. This highlights that this particular field of paleontology has historically relied heavily on sheer speculation, conjecture, and imagination in its attempt to depict, illustrate, and bring these ancient creatures to life. The existence of dinosaurs was first speculatively hypothesized by a museum head, coincidentally in the mid-19th century during the heyday of evolutionism, before a single dinosaur fossil had ever been found. The mainstream press and media worldwide got to work hyping stories of these supposed long-lost animals, and then, lo and behold, 12 years later in 1854, Ferdinand Vanderveer Hayden, during his exploration of the upper Missouri River, found proof of Owen's theory. A few unidentified teeth he mailed to leading paleontologist Joseph Leidy, who several years later declared them to be from an ancient extinct Trachodon dinosaur, which ironically means rough tooth. Firstly, it should be needless to say that it is impossible to reconstruct an entire hypothetical ancient animal based on a few teeth. But even more importantly, it is dubious that a myriad of ancient reptile, bird, and reptile-mammal transitional forms necessary for the blossoming theory of evolution would be hypothesized and then conveniently discovered by teams of evolutionists and archaeologists purposely out looking to find such fossils. And it is even more dubious that such fossils have supposedly existed for millions of years, but were never found by or known to any civilization in the history of humanity until evolutionism's renaissance in the mid-19th century. What motivation, other than a pre-existing agenda, could prompt someone to identify a mere handful of fossils as remnants of an ancient extinct species, and then attempt a reconstruction from such scant remains? These fossils were declared millions of years old, assertions made a century before radiometric dating techniques were in development. Instead, they relied on relative dating methods such as stratigraphy and the use of index fossils. These methods, often criticized for their imprecision and susceptibility to circular reasoning, faced inherent challenges in providing accurate dating estimations, further perpetuating the conjectural narrative surrounding dinosaurs. As an example, we will examine the first illustration of the very popular Tyrannosaurus rex, shown here, published shortly after its discovery in 1905. Looking closer clearly demonstrates the significant conjecture prevalent in the early days of dinosaur research. Initially, scientists relied on highly limited evidence, only parts of the skull, a few jaw fragments, several ribs, scattered vertebrae, and assorted bone fragments. Upon its first discovery, the Tyrannosaurus rex fossils accounted for only an estimated 15% of its entire skeleton, which were used to reconstruct and depict its image. From this scant evidence, reconstructing a complete depiction of the animal and then declaring it a new species required a degree of faith and speculation bordering on the farcical. Most notably, the absence of arms and legs among the discovered fossils raises critical questions about the far-reaching assumption that this creature was bipedal. Interestingly, the minimal changes in the depiction of the Tyrannosaurus rex from its original 1905 illustration up to modern day, despite numerous subsequent fossil discoveries, challenge the likelihood that such speculative interpretations could have been so accurate on the first attempt. This scenario underscores the need for caution and critical evaluation in paleontological interpretations, especially when based on such highly incomplete data. Given that the original depictions were based solely on imaginative interpretations of so few fossils discovered, it is surprising how little they have evolved into more accurate representations, despite the continual discovery of alleged new fossils. David Wozni, an American writer, said, "Why were there no discoveries by Native Americans in all the years previous when they roamed the American continents? There is no belief in dinosaurs in the Native American religion or tradition. For that matter, why were there no discoveries prior to the 19th century in any part of the world? According to the World Book Encyclopedia, before the 1800s, no one ever knew that dinosaurs ever existed. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, large deposits of dinosaur remains were discovered in western North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Dinosaur deposits also lie in Belgium, Mongolia, Tanzania, West Germany, and many other parts of the world. Why has man suddenly made all these discoveries? The land areas of Belgium, Mongolia, Tanzania, Western Germany, and the Americas as well were inhabited and very well explored for thousands of years, and there were no discoveries until the 19th century. Why? Wayne Grady, the American journalist, wrote, "The period following this, from around 1870 to 1880, became a period in North America where some of the most underhanded shenanigans in the history of science were conducted. In what was known as the Great Dinosaur Rush, or Bone Wars, Edward Drinker Cope of the Academy of Natural Sciences and Othniel Marsh of the Peabody Museum of Natural History began a lifelong rivalry and passion for dinosaur hunting. They started out as friends, but became bitter enemies during a legendary feud involving double-crossing, slander, bribery, theft, spying, and destruction of bones by both parties. Marsh is said to have discovered over 500 different ancient species, including 80 dinosaurs, while Cope discovered 56. Out of the 136 dinosaur species supposedly discovered by the two men, however, only 32 are presently considered valid. The rest have all been proven to be falsifications and fabrications. None of them once claimed to find a complete skeleton either, so all their work involved reconstructions. In fact, to this day, no complete skeleton has ever been found, and so all dinosaurs are reconstructions. Discoveries and excavations most typically seem not to be made by disinterested people, such as farmers, ranchers, hikers, outdoor recreationalists, building construction industry basement excavators, pipeline trench diggers, and mining industry personnel, but rather by people with vested interests, such as paleontologists, scientists, university professors, and museum organization personnel, who were intentionally looking for dinosaur bones, or who have studied dinosaurs previously. Do dinosaur professionals with vested interests have some kind of well-kept secret about knowing where to search that dinosaur amateurs without vested interests are unable to figure out? The finds are often made during special dinosaur bone hunting trips and expeditions by these people to faraway regions already inhabited and explored. This seems highly implausible. More believable is the case of the discovery of the first original Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947, which were unintentionally discovered by a child, and which were all published by 1955. In some cases of discoveries of dinosaur bones by people who do not work in a job related to dinosaurs, it was suggested to them by some dinosaur professional to go look or dig in a certain area. Also very interesting to note are special areas set aside and designated as dinosaur parks, for which amateur dinosaur hunters are required to first obtain a dinosaur hunting license. The previous quotes provide an insightful glimpse into the early history of dinosaur hunting and offer a preview of what we can anticipate in the future as new discoveries come to light. While it would be entirely incorrect to deny the existence of extinct species from our past, many of which have been well documented, it is essential to recognize the extremely unreliable and imaginative nature of this particular field of paleontology and its history. A distinct pattern emerges, suggesting that dinosaur discoveries predominantly occur within the realm of vested interests and experts in paleontology. This pattern is in stark contrast to the absence of such discoveries before paleontology was recognized as a scientific discipline, and the complete lack of dinosaur evidence in the historical records of ancient civilizations. Furthermore, even in modern times, the rate of new dinosaur discoveries, whether by vested or non-vested parties, remains notably rare, underscoring even more of this truly intriguing pattern. In a critical observation, it is noteworthy that despite claims of over 1,000 dinosaur species once inhabiting the Earth, a significant majority of these discoveries occurred within a relatively narrow time frame. Intriguingly, this period coincided with, or suspiciously aligned with, the era when the theory of evolution was fast gaining popularity and acceptance. Despite the momentous advancements in modern excavation technology, and during the most populated period in world history, discoveries of dinosaur fossils have seemingly become increasingly rare. Furthermore, when such fossils are found, they are typically not discovered organically by neutral parties, such as construction crews or site builders, but rather by those directly involved in paleontology. Efforts to access and examine original dinosaur fossils, whether from museum exhibits or custodians claiming to possess them, are systematically denied, regardless of one's affiliation with scientific or paleontological fields. This field of paleontology remains closely guarded, with limited participation resembling more of an exclusive fraternity than an open scientific pursuit. Although I was once captivated by the allure of these creatures, their fascinating illustrations, and the sheer concept of prehistoric life, I have come to a stage where it has become crucial to question the plausibility and veracity of this entire account from its beginning. As I searched deeper into its origins and discovered a vast array of discrediting factors, it became clear that many fraudulent cases and highly speculative artistic interpretations have been employed from the outset to advance this naturalistic, evolution-based agenda. The absence of any third-party analysis and scrutiny surrounding dinosaur remains highlights a stark reality where vested interests exert complete control over and shape the entire dinosaur narrative. We must consider the possibility that the narrative surrounding dinosaurs has been an elaborate deception from the start, one that furthers the theory of evolution and the concept of ancient life forms. It becomes evident that there is a restrictive aspect to this field of paleontology, exclusive to experts, where third-party involvement, critique, and scrutiny are not permitted. This firm exclusivity reveals that only a privileged few within the field are credited with these discoveries, pointing to a clear lack of impartial findings from unaffiliated parties. While these experts may claim their expertise directs them to prime locations for such finds, it is important to consider the ratio of paleontologists to the general working-class population in particular areas, where one might certainly expect random dinosaur discoveries. Consider the extensive amount of daily excavation activities undertaken by builders and construction workers worldwide, especially in regions purportedly rich in dinosaur fossils. We find ourselves in the most populated era in world history, equipped with an abundance of massive earth-moving equipment that surpasses anything seen in prior history. Basic calculations reveal a notably skewed ratio, conservatively estimated at 1 in 10 million, between the number of paleontologists and everyday workers who might incidentally discover dinosaur remains. Is it statistically feasible for nearly all discoveries to be made exclusively by this very small group of professionals? This stark contrast highlights that fossil discoveries are almost always credited to paleontologists, who not only unearth these relics, but also assign their allegedly ancient ages. As well, it is these experts who classify the remains as dinosaurs or as new species, almost always relying on highly scant evidence, fueling continual doubts regarding the sufficiency of data underpinning such categorical identifications. While it is true that past species have become extinct and their remains have been uncovered, we must acknowledge that the initial history of dinosaur discovery in particular was entirely conjectural concerning the alleged ancient age and the attempted reconstructions of unearthed fossils. It is also important to consider that no photographs of fossils or remains from this initial period of rapid discovery are available. We only have artistic interpretations, despite the availability of photography at the time. All illustrations and representations of these creatures were entirely speculative, given that less than 15% of an alleged dinosaur's remains were typically discovered. Given these considerations, when reflecting on the formative years of the dinosaur discovery era, it becomes imperative to thoroughly scrutinize the credibility of the overall account. Let's explore various historical concepts that have been used to uphold and validate the theory of evolution. I'm confident that these findings and key historical events, which have been instrumental in shaping my own perspective, will similarly assist others in questioning and ultimately rejecting this theory entirely. By discarding this obstructive theory, we can eliminate barriers that hinder our pursuit of truth, freeing ourselves from the constraints it imposes. This liberation allows us to transcend the notion that the world's diverse array of complex life forms are merely the result of time and chance. This prevailing scientific theory represents a significant obstacle, impeding our ability to move beyond the limitations of an inherently flawed naturalistic philosophy. It limits our comprehensive understanding and hinders us from embracing the profound realization that a creative force beyond comprehension has shaped the world we inhabit and is the sole author of all our experiences. To begin, I will present some of my favorite quotes that I've accumulated over the years, reflecting my own examination, consideration, and eventual rejection of this theory. Ironically, let's begin with none other than Charles Darwin himself, the renowned pioneer of the theory of evolution, who introduced his ideas in 1859 through his seminal work on the origin of species. Charles Darwin said, "To suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection, seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree." Louis Bonheur said, "Evolution is a fairy tale for grown-ups. This theory has helped nothing in the progress of science. It is useless." Malcolm Muggeridge said, "I myself am convinced that the theory of evolution, especially the extent to which it's been applied, will be one of the great jokes in the history books of the future. Posterity will marvel that so very flimsy and dubious a hypothesis could be accepted with the incredible credulity that it has." Dr. Colin Patterson said, "No one has ever produced a species by mechanisms of natural selection. No one has ever gotten near it, and most of the current argument in neo-Darwinism is about this question." Adnan Akhtar said, "The complexity and intricacy of living organisms cannot be explained solely by chance and natural processes. There must be a higher intelligence behind their creation." The theory of evolution, formulated by Charles Darwin, posits that all species of organisms have descended from a common ancestor through gradual changes over long periods of time, encapsulated in 4 primary concepts. 1. Descent with modification. Species change over time, and new species arise from pre-existing ones through a process called descent with modification. 2. Natural selection. The driving force behind evolution is natural selection. Individuals with advantageous traits are more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass on these traits to future generations. 3. Common ancestry. All living organisms share a common ancestry, and the diversity of life on Earth is a result of branching and diversification over millions of years. 4. Gradualism. Evolution occurs gradually through the accumulation of small changes over long periods of time, leading to the formation of new species. The theory of evolution posits that the diversity and complexity of life can be explained by natural processes without the need for supernatural intervention. However, considerable doubt persists regarding the fundamental concept that one species can gradually transform into a completely different species over time. Skepticism is further fueled by historical examples that often rely on highly speculative interpretations, requiring a significant degree of faith to even be considered plausible. Instead of categorizing certain discoveries as entirely new species, or simply small variations within existing species, they are often labeled as transitional forms. This labeling is a common practice among evolutionists attempting to establish intermediate connections in the evolutionary chain. This entirely speculative process forms the foundation of the theory, suggesting, for example, how an aquatic species might undergo a gradual series of transitions over an extended period through successive generations, ultimately becoming a land-dwelling animal. This involves a gradual process in which an organism undergoes a reduction or loss of distinct aquatic features, which become less advantageous in water, while simultaneously developing entirely new features that are specifically adapted for survival in a non-aquatic land environment. However, it is essential to recognize the inherent complexities associated with embracing this theory. The theory requires acceptance of countless leaps of faith, undergoing transitions from one form to another without providing any demonstrated biological or chemical mechanisms to explain the feasibility of such transitions. We are simply asked to play along out of blind trust to keep this naturalistic theory cohesive. Charles Darwin himself acknowledged the crucial importance of finding evidence of transitional forms in nature, commonly referred to as the fossil record. He conceded that without such evidence, his theory would be deemed inadequate. Despite ongoing research, there remains a significant deficiency in the fossil record, a deficiency that has consistently posed a critical obstacle to supporting this theory since its inception. When purported missing links are discovered, they have been marred by numerous instances of fraud and forgery. These historical falsifications have damaged the credibility of evolutionary theory, revealing the lengths to which some evolutionists are willing to go to support naturalistic views. While the concept of a sequential series of transitional forms may seem logical and compelling when depicted through imagery such as the well-known monkey-to-man illustration, it is crucial to acknowledge the intricate complexities and the significant challenges in plausibility connecting these transitions. This recognition points to the considerable degree of faith necessary for the theory of evolution to be firmly accepted. Throughout history, numerous instances of confirmed fraud and creative reconstructions have been aimed at attempting to identify missing links in the story of human origins. However, all attempts have ultimately failed. As we move ahead, constructing a compelling case against the theory of evolution requires us to highlight the extensive range of speculations that endeavor to support it, as well as a history replete with fraud and deception. Upon examining these cases, it becomes apparent that they stretch the limits of credibility, bordering on the impossible, and thus make it exceptionally challenging to seriously consider the validity of such claims and the overall theory. This discussion underscores the importance of conducting a comprehensive evaluation of proposed evidence, rather than simply accepting it as scientifically valid and worthy of consideration. It highlights the necessity of looking beyond persuasive illustrations and depictions that might lead us to believe we have seen conclusive proof. We should be encouraged to further examine the complete narrative before drawing firm conclusions and claiming to have thoroughly examined the evidence. Turning our attention to historical instances, there have been numerous cases where scientists and proponents of the theory of evolution have used cleverly crafted fakes, forgeries, and highly speculative assumptions in their efforts to support this naturalistic theory. These incidents underscore the need for vigilance and thorough scrutiny in scientific research, cautioning against acceptance based solely on blind trust. Proposed by German biologist Ernest Haeckel, the recapitulation theory suggested that the development of an individual organism, ontogeny, recapitulates the evolutionary history of its species, phylogeny. According to this theory, the stages of embryonic development in an organism mirror the evolutionary stages that its ancestors underwent. Modern embryology and evolutionary biology have revealed that the relationship between autogeny and phylogeny is far more complex than Haeckel proposed. Haeckel's recapitulation theory has been widely discredited and is no longer considered accurate by any of the scientific community worldwide. Ernest Haeckel's scientific work, particularly his illustrations of embryos he presented to support his recapitulation theory, faced intense criticism from his peers. Accused of manipulating and exaggerating his drawings to strengthen his recapitulation theory, Haeckel was found guilty of scientific misconduct during a trial by his peers. The verdict confirmed that his illustrations did not reflect the actual appearance of embryos. This controversy undermined Haeckel's credibility and led to a loss of support for his recapitulation theory within the scientific community. After his trial, Haeckel was quoted saying, "After this compromising confession of forgery, I should be obliged to consider myself condemned and annihilated if I had not the consolation of seeing, side by side with me in the prisoner's dock, hundreds of fellow culprits, among them many of the most trusted observers and most esteemed biologists. The great majority of all the diagrams in the best biological textbooks, treatises, and journals would incur in the same degree the charge of forgery, for all of them are inexact and are more or less doctored, schematized, and constructed. The first recognized Neanderthal remains were discovered in the Neander Valley near Dusseldorf, Germany, in 1856. Quarry workers stumbled upon a skull cap, several limb bones, and some other fragments. Interestingly enough, these discoveries were made during a period that coincided with the release of Charles Darwin's work on the origin of species. Neanderthals are claimed to be a close relative of modern humans. To this day, reconstructed drawings of this Neanderthal man are depicted in scholarly journals and textbooks and claimed to be a missing evolutionary link. The fact is, however, that all so-called Neanderthal remains have never been shown to be any more different from modern humans than an Asian from a Caucasian, or an Inuit from an Aborigine. As well, the skull size shows its brain was 13% larger than the average brain of modern man, making it impossible to be an intermediary between modern man and ape. Even Time magazine in 1971 claimed the primitiveness of Neanderthal man to be unwarranted, that he could walk the street unrecognized. One writer even commenting that historians of the future may declare all of us insane for not detecting and refuting this incredible blunder with adequate determination. One of the main proponents pushing Neanderthal man as an authentic species was Rainer Prosch, a German anthropologist and former professor who gained attention for his involvement in a scientific fraud related to Neanderthal remains. Prosch claimed to have discovered and analyzed several important Neanderthal fossils, including the famous Heidelberg man. However, it was later revealed that Prosch had manipulated the dating of these fossils and provided inaccurate information about their age. Investigations into Prosch's work uncovered numerous irregularities and inconsistencies. It was found that Prosch had engaged in fraudulent practices, such as misrepresenting the origin and age of the fossils. As a result, his scientific reputation was severely damaged, and his work came under intense scrutiny. In the early 20th century, fossil specimens were discovered on the Indonesian island of Java by Dutch physician and paleontologist Eugene Dubois. It is worth noting that Dubois had previously studied as an apprentice under Ernest Haeckel, the evolutionist involved in the elaborate hoaxes previously outlined. Dubois claimed to have found significant remains at the Trinil site along the Solo River, including a skull cap, a leg bone, a jaw fragment, and 3 teeth. Initially, he named the fossil Pithecanthropus erectus, suggesting it represented an intermediary form between apes and humans, from which he constructed the ape-like Java man. Within 10 years of its discovery, Java man was the main subject of over 80 evolution books and articles, and was eventually named Homo erectus. Hank Hanegraaff, author and talk show host, wrote, "Interestingly, some of the teeth were old and some young. The bones belonged to ape, female and male. It was an interesting conglomeration, and the reason that people didn't catch on to it is because the find of Dubois was kept from scholars for about 30 years. He also withheld the discovery of modern human remains, which were found in the same stratum as Java Man. Of course, that would have ruined his claims that Java Man was the ancestor of modern-day humans. Finally, enough pressure was placed on him that the actual bones were allowed to be examined, and the discrepancies were found, and eventually, enlightened America, as well as the world, found out that this was a hoax. Java Man's teeth were discovered to be of varying ages, and the bones were a combination of human and ape remains, including a large gibbon's skull. Rudolf Virchow, who was Ernest Haeckel's own professor and the leading pathology expert of his era, made the following statement. In my opinion, this creature was an animal, a giant gibbon in fact, and the thigh bone has not the slightest connection with the skull. Many experts, including himself, reached the conclusion that the thigh bone is undoubtedly human, whereas the skullcap and teeth are attributed to a primate. The story of Piltdown Man revolves around a notorious archaeological hoax that occurred in the early 20th century. The discovery took place in 1912 in Piltdown, England, when Charles Dawson, an amateur archaeologist, claimed to have found remains of an ancient hominid. The findings were presented as a missing link between apes and humans, garnering significant attention from the scientific community. The supposed Piltdown Man fossils included a human-like skull with an ape-like jaw, along with various other bone fragments and teeth. The discovery initially received widespread acceptance and was seen as a breakthrough in understanding human evolution at the time. However, suspicions about the authenticity of Piltdown Man arose in the following decades. In 1953, the Piltdown Man specimens were revealed to be an elaborate forgery. In 1953, the fossils were conclusively identified as a composite of ancient human skull fragments, an orangutan jaw, and chimpanzee teeth, molars and premolars, that were filed down to make them appear more human-like. As well, the bones were chemically treated and stained to match an aged appearance. It became clear that the deception was meticulously planned and executed. The Piltdown Man hoax had a significant impact on the field of paleoanthropology. The identity of the hoaxer remains uncertain, with Charles Dawson being the primary suspect, although others may have been involved. In 1922, a single tooth was discovered in Nebraska's Snake Creek Formation. Some scientists, including Henry Fairfield Osborn, an American paleontologist, and the president of the American Museum of Natural History from 1908 to 1933, speculated that it belonged to an early human ancestor. Osborn even provided an artistic reconstruction of what Nebraska Man and his wife and child might have looked like, based on a single tooth, highlighting again what was mentioned prior about extensive range of speculations. However, further excavations and research revealed that the tooth actually belonged to an extinct pig-like mammal rather than a human ancestor. The misidentification of the tooth as evidence for human evolution underscores yet another instance of premature and rather extreme speculation based on limited evidence. This highlights the pervasive nature of such attempts throughout history to establish supposed missing links in the human evolutionary chain. Lucy was discovered in 1974 in the Afar region of Ethiopia by paleoanthropologist Donald Johansen and his team. The discovery represented a relatively complete skeleton of an alleged early human ancestor claimed to have lived approximately 3.2 million years ago. Lucy belonged to the species Australopithecus afarensis, which displayed a combination of ape-like and human-like characteristics and was claimed to walk upright. There have been numerous controversies and debates surrounding Lucy's classification and significance. For example, there were claims that Johansen did not allow other scientists to examine Lucy's bones until 1982, 8 years after the discovery. Some argue that as more Australopithecus skeletons have been found and examined, many leading evolutionists now consider Lucy to be simply an extinct type of ape, similar to modern pygmy chimpanzees, rather than a direct human ancestor. In May 1999, the French Science AV magazine ran a cover story titled "Goodbye, Lucy." The article discussed how Lucy, once considered the most famous fossil of Australopithecus, was no longer seen as the root of the human race, and, quote, needs to be removed from the supposed human family tree. In 1982, a fragment of a skull known as Orse Man was discovered in the Spanish town of Orse. Initially believed to be from a human ancestor dating back approximately 1.8 million years, the skull fragment later failed to substantiate its highly speculative claims of such antiquity. Subsequent studies and reevaluation of the fossil indicated that it is more likely to have belonged to an ancient donkey rather than a human ancestor. The precise identification of the fragment remains a subject of ongoing scientific debate and investigation. The Orse skull discovery, once thought to be a significant finding related to early humans, is now considered more likely to be associated with other extinct animals or potentially an artifact of geological processes. The theory of evolution as an explanation for macroevolution, wherein one species can transition into a distinctly new species, has never been directly observed. Instead, the observable evidence supports microevolution, which refers to small changes within a species based on subtle variations, such as gradual adaptations in beak sizes among birds. It is important to recognize that microevolution operates within a very limited framework and remains the extent of what has been scientifically confirmed to date. Throughout history, evolutionists have made persistent efforts, many times fraudulent as we have seen, to attempt to bridge highly implausible gaps within the theory of evolution. These attempts aim to establish it as a valid and scientifically supported explanation for the gradual evolution of simple single-celled organisms into the diverse and complex array of life forms we observe all around us today. Perhaps there is no greater illustration of the profound complexities involved than the process of a single sperm cell merging with an egg, setting in motion the remarkable journey that leads to the creation of an entire human being. Attempting to reverse engineer such complex mechanisms highlights the vast chasms of understanding that must still be traversed to scientifically support evolutionary concepts. Consider the multitude of wonders that ensue. The intricate complexities of eyes that perceive the world, ears that capture the symphony of sound, an olfactory system that distinguishes the subtlest of scents, a robust skeletal framework that provides structure, a circulatory system that coordinates the flow of vital substances, along with a meticulously interconnected nervous system, culminating in a fully conscious brain at the center. The complexity of it all seems boundless, leaving us in awe of the wondrous enigma that life presents and how it could possibly come into being, especially if attempting to explain this through evolutionary processes rather than a creative author at work.
Kofi, follow me.